Chapter 1176. Under the candlelight, Tian's white pajamas were somewhat translucent under the candlelight, and the white underwear inside could be vaguely seen. The good lines of her body were clearly and undoubtedly revealed, and some attractive places were also vaguely revealed. Coupled with the noble and elegant temperament of a queen, her sexiness was different from others. However, she was wearing a pair of New Balance sneakers, which are the shoes she wore during the day. The village had prepared this room, but they had not prepared slippers. This was not surprising at all. The slippers they wore on their feet were even worn out, and they were reluctant to throw them away. How could there be extra slippers for her and Charlotte to wear? However, it was not only Tian who had become a sexy stunner. The bed in the room had also become a flower bed. There were more than a dozen banana leaves on the bed, and the dirty bedsheet had been replaced with a green, natural banana leaf bedsheet. There was a large pile of flowers on the bedside. There were all kinds of colors, but they could not be named. The flowers exuded a floral fragrance, and the moldy smell in the room was purified by the fragrance of the flowers, making it smell better. Flowers, beauties, and a bed made of banana leaves. Charlotte was already faintly excited. He walked over and said with a smile, "Where did you go to pick the banana leaves and flowers?" Tian said, "There are a few banana trees and flowers not far behind this house. When I want to pick them, a woman helped me." "That's much better." Charlotte lay on the bed, and the banana leaves were cold. Tian also came to the bed and laid down beside Charlotte. She turned her body and looked at Charlotte's face. Her eyes were full of love and excitement. However, she knew how to restrain herself. She would not get into the topic too quickly. She wanted to enjoy every minute of the process. Charlotte also turned over and lay on his side, quietly watching her. Tian was looking at his eyes and his face, but he was looking at the snow-white skin that was exposed from the collar of her pajamas, as well as her deep cleavage, as well as her flat stomach and white and tender legs. That was how men were. They would never be the same as women. "You're finally back. I've been waiting for this day for too long," Tian said affectionately. Charlotte grinned. "If I don't come back, won't you have to keep waiting? Why bother? With your status, even the princes of Europe would bow down to you." Tian reached out and covered Charlotte's mouth. "I don't want to hear that. You cannot come back. I know you. I thought I was your wife. As long as you have me in your heart, you won't bear to see me suffer so much. So, even if you don't come back now, you will come back in the future. I'm willing to keep waiting." Charlotte felt a slight pain in his heart. How could he have a future? It was because he did not have a future that he gave her a child. From his point of view, if he did not do it now, he would not have the chance to do it in the future. If he left this world, Tian's wish to have a child would never come true. How could he bear to see her grow old alone? "How did it go?" "It's done." Xiaolei said, "I gave that Syed money and asked him to rent a car to cover us to Kano City in Nigeria. After he's ready, we'll leave in the early hours of the day after tomorrow." Tian suddenly moved closer, and like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, lightly kissed Xiaolei's forehead. Charlotte was slightly stunned. Tian leaned over again and kissed his eyes. Xiaolei was like an enraged wild beast. He crawled up with a whoosh, pressed down on Tian's body, and kissed her cherry lips. The person who started the fire must be punished. He was going to punish Tian for having a woman who started the fire without saying a word. Tian provoked him to turn him into an impulsive beast. Now that he was pouncing on her, she was not afraid at all. Instead, she faced him bravely. Knock, knock, knock. Syed's voice was heard after knocking on the door. "Mr. Song, I brought you dinner." Charlotte quickly got up from Tian's body. Tian quickly wrapped herself in the pajamas that Charlotte had taken off. After getting off the bed, she pulled on the white fabric that Charlotte had taken off her legs. Her face was red, and her eyes were about to tear up. Charlotte went to open the door and poked his head through the gap. "Thank you, Mr. Syed. Just give it to me." Syed seemed to have guessed something. He smiled and handed a tray with 2 plates to Charlotte and said, "Just leave the plates in the room after you're done. I'll pick them up tomorrow." "Okay, good night, Mr. Syed." "Good night, Mr. Song. Have a nice night." Syed turned around, and left. Charlotte closed the door and went to the bed with the tray. There was a boiled potato, a ball of rice, and a piece of meat from an unknown animal on the 2 plates. The meat looked well roasted. It was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. It was the dinner they prepared for their distinguished guests from afar. It was quite shabby, but considering the harsh conditions here, they had prepared the best for their distinguished guests. "Are you hungry? Have something to eat," said Charlotte. Shinatianin climbed back onto the bed and said with eager eyes, "Let's eat later." Charlotte said, "The food will be cold soon." Shinatianin rolled her eyes at Charlotte. "Do you think I'm in a mood to eat anything else?" Charlotte walked over and said with a smile, "What do you want to eat then? What do you think?" Charlotte put the tray on the windowsill and climbed onto the bed. He hadn't even taken the initiative to make a move when Shinatianin had already tangled with him. The two of them were entangled together. At a very critical moment, Shinatianin stopped them. "What?" Charlotte was anxious. "The antidote. I haven't used the antidote yet." "You know about the antidote?" Charlotte was surprised. Shinatianin looked at him coquettishly. "Not only do I know about the antidote, but I also have it with me." "Wait a minute, I'll go get it." Charlotte was pushed away by her. He was surprised to see her take out a bottle of antidote from the flowers at the head of the bed. He was stunned for a moment before he said, "Why do you have this thing?" Shinatianin said, "Yu Yin told me. This bottle of antidote was also given to me by Yu Yin." Charlotte, she had prepared everything. What else could he say? Shinatianin unscrewed the bottle of antidote and said, "Turn around. I don't want you to look." Charlotte smiled bitterly and turned around. He heard some voices, and those voices filled him with filthy imagination. However, a few seconds later, a soft hand reached over his shoulder, holding the bottle of antidote. "Well, you must be very experienced. Help me. I don't know how to use this," Shinatianin said. Her voice was even softer than a mosquito's buzz. Charlotte turned around and looked at her, who was dressed in white. His eyes seemed to be hiding 2 balls of fire. Shinatianin lay down and closed her eyes. She was very shy and very excited. Although she and Charlotte had been husband and wife before, at this moment, she was acting like a young girl on her first time. When Charlotte touched her, she couldn't help but tremble. She was so nervous that she could die. The most nerve-wracking moment had come. Her little mouth opened and couldn't close. The moonlight outside the window was alluring. The night wind blew through the treetops, making a rustling sound. The branches swayed left and right, swayed left and right. The passion subsided like a tide, and the two of them also calmed down. Charlotte brought 2 plates of food to the bed and gave 1 plate to Shinatianin. Shinatianin picked up the potato and ate more than half of it in 1 bite. She had just consumed a lot of energy. She was really hungry and needed to replenish her energy. Charlotte also picked up the potato and took a bite. However, there was no taste in his mouth, and he didn't have any appetite. He was stunned for a moment. He swallowed the potato in his mouth and then took another bite. It was still the same feeling. He couldn't taste the food, and he didn't have any appetite at all. After that, half of the potato went down his stomach. He even had a nauseous feeling and wanted to vomit. He suddenly remembered the time when Zhu Xianyue was recuperating in Ping and residence. Zhu Xianyue almost didn't eat normal food. After eating the last AE capsule, he didn't show any feelings of disgust toward normal food. However, as his evolution deepened, he also started to hate normal food. After eating the last AE capsule, he started his evolution. His ability became stronger and stronger. His body was changing rapidly, and a series of side effects appeared one by one. Abandoning the body. This was the final stage of human evolution. If he didn't even need the body, then why would he still need to eat? He wanted to eat humans. Cold sweat broke out on his back. He thought he could use his willpower to overcome the desire to eat humans, but now there was a problem in front of him. If he didn't eat like Zhu Xianyue, he would die. Could he still resist that desire? "Why aren't you eating? Doesn't it taste good?" Shinatianin said with a smile. "I think it's not bad. I'm really starving." Charlotte came back to his senses. He wanted to take a bite of the potato, but the thought made him feel disgusted. He then said, "I'm actually not hungry. You can eat it. I don't want to eat anymore." Then give me the potato. Shintu Tianyin took the potato that had a bite out of it from Xia Lei's hand. Charlotte asked curiously, "Since when did you like eating potatoes so much?" Shintu Tianyin said, "I need to replenish my energy. Let's do it again." Charlotte was speechless. Shintu Tianyin smiled. "I heard that if you exercise twice at a specific time, there's a chance of getting pregnant with twins. I want to give it a try. What if I'm lucky and it happens? A son and a daughter. Just thinking about it makes me happy." Charlotte also smiled, but he felt bitter in his heart. At this rate, when would he eat people? Would he have a chance to see Shintu Tianyin give birth to a child? By the way, if you're pregnant with twins, what name are you going to give them as a father? Shintu Tianyin said, while chewing the potato. His voice was a little muffled. Charlotte said, "Haven't I already given them names? On the night of our wedding, you said if I were pregnant with twins, what name would the boy and what name would the girl? I said the boy would be called Xiaoyang, and the girl would be called Xiaoyu." Shintu Tianyin's eyes were faintly watery. You still remember," Charlotte said. "I remember everything related to you." Shintu Tianyin let out a moan. He didn't even want the potato anymore. He desperately threw himself on Charlotte. "Then you must remember that I consulted a doctor. As long as you exercise twice in a quarter of an hour, there's a chance of getting pregnant with 2 children, right?" Charlotte smiled. "Of course I remember. Otherwise, what would we be doing now?" Shintu Tianyin buried her head in Charlotte's chest. It was not because she was shy, but because she couldn't bear it. The wind blew again. It was wilder than before. The branches swayed in the wind, making strange sounds. Chapter 1177. The woman next to him was still in a sweet dream due to fatigue. Her breathing was even, and there was a satisfied smile on her lips. She should be playing with her Xiaoyang and Xiaoyu in her dream, right? Maybe her wish would come true, and she would be pregnant with 2 children after tonight. Charlotte got up from the bed and looked at the watch on his hand. There was still some time before dawn, but he was not sleepy at all. In fact, ever since he took the last AE capsule, his sleep time had gradually decreased, and the time he slept was also getting less and less. The decrease in sleep seemed to be a side effect of the body entering a comprehensive evolution. Then, at a certain level of evolution, would he no longer need to sleep? This was something he could not determine, because Zhu Xinyue was sometimes very sleepy. However, Zhu Xinyue had created a new body, which was completely different from the prehistoric black-robed man. However, Charlotte was too lazy to think about this problem. Compared to not wanting to eat normal food, the side effect of not wanting to sleep was nothing. Charlotte got out of bed, put on his underwear, then opened his suitcase and took out his hacking computer from the suitcase. Before turning on the computer to work, Charlotte habitually paid attention to the stock market. However, this time, he did not enter the stock trading software. He just opened the stock market board of Shaoqian and grasped all the situation. In just a few days, the assets in the 4 accounts had reached $4 billion US. Even if he personally operated and did his best, he would not be able to achieve such a result. He saw the records of Shaoqian's operation on the stock market board. There were countless stocks bought and sold. Its way of operating funds was not long-term investment. It was all based on band operations, buying when the price was low and selling when the price was high. As long as it was a profitable stock, it would have its trading records. However, when Charlotte browsed the stock market board of Shaoqian's trading records, a dialog box was lying on the operation interface, and there was a paragraph of red text in Chinese characters. Warning, too few trading accounts. Frequent trading will attract the attention of the SEC. More accounts need to be set up, as well as a transfer account. Then, an option of yes and no popped up on the operation interface. Charlotte smiled and chose yes without hesitation. Another dialog box popped up on the operation interface, with new Chinese characters written in red. Trading account and bank account are being created. With the stock market version of Shaoqian's artificial intelligence, Charlotte didn't even need to create a stock market trading account or a bank account. No matter which country it was, there would be a large number of zombie accounts, which were accounts that had no transactions. It only needed to hack into those accounts, change the password, and then it could use those accounts. It could have as many of these accounts as it wanted, and it would change them after a certain period of time. There was no way to track them. It didn't matter who the account Xiaoqian created was, as long as the money it earned from the U.S. stock market was real. The stock market version of Xiaoqian's speed in creating stock market trading accounts and bank accounts was very fast. In just 5 minutes, a new dialog box popped up. It said, "This time 100 stock market trading accounts and 100 bank accounts have been created." Next time, would he allow Xiaoqian to create an account based on her funds? Between yes and no, Charlotte chose yes. A new dialog box popped up on the operation interface again. It said, "Please provide your real bank account. Xiaoqian will transfer the funds to your account based on the situation." Between yes and no, Charlotte chose yes. Then, he entered his secret account in a Swiss bank into the input box. This account would be used to receive the money Xiaoqian earned from the U.S. stock market. He wasn't worried that the U.S. government would track this account, because the stock market version of his concubine would constantly transfer money between various accounts. The stock market version of Xiaoqian was equivalent to a thief hiding in the U.S. stock market. The thief itself didn't exist, so there was no way to trace it. Rolling a snowball and then smashing the U.S. stock market with it was Charlotte's original plan. However, because he didn't have the time to do it himself, he gave up on this plan. His only purpose was to earn some pocket money from the U.S. stock market. However, now that he had the stock market version of Xiaoqian, he saw hope for this plan to succeed. After everything was done, Charlotte exited the stock market version of Xiaoqian. He thought to himself, "If I really have to leave this world before that, I must use Xiaoqian's snowball to smash the U.S. stock market." It had always been the U.S. that hunted the stock markets of other countries. No one had ever dared to do so in the U.S. stock market. Charlotte would be the first person in history to do so. In fact, it wasn't that others didn't dare to do so. It was because they didn't have the ability or the funds. Charlotte had the ability, and Xiaoqian could help him solve the problem of funds. Then, it was only a matter of time. The current situation was that even if Charlotte was watching his ex-wife sleep in a thatched hut in Africa, he was still making money every second. Charlotte started to write a super artificial intelligence version of Xiaoqian on a hacker's computer. He had already successfully created a spy version of Xiaoqian and an online version of Xiaoqian. By integrating the two and filling in more intelligent and powerful content, it was only a matter of time before he created a virtual existence that could rival or even surpass the U.S. celestial system. His time was getting lesser and lesser, but there were still so many things to do. He could no longer bear to use time to sleep. The sound of the wind outside the window mixed with the sound of insects. The night in the African village was not quiet, but those sounds did not affect Charlotte's work at all. The darkness receded, and light spread from the east to the whole world. The sky in the east was already very bright, but the small village was still shrouded in darkness. Shinta Tianin, who was beside him, suddenly woke up. She looked at Charlotte, who was sitting by the bed and typing on the keyboard, and said with some surprise, "You didn't sleep?" Charlotte turned to look at her and said with a smile, "I slept for a while, and then I woke up. I couldn't sleep anymore, so I got up to do something." Shinta Tianin climbed onto Charlotte's back, pressed her face against his, and said gently, "Don't be too tired. I know your ideals and ambitions, but I want to tell you that you've already done very, very well. It's time to let go of some things and relax. You're too tired. Take a rest." The enchanting fragrance lingering in his nostrils and the warmth and softness pressing against his back made Charlotte no longer have the mood to continue writing the ultimate version of Xiaoqian. He closed the hacker's computer and reached out to pull her into his arms. He said with a smile, "You're thinking about something bad again, aren't you?" Shinta Tianin curled up the corner of her mouth, and her eyes were full of desire. "You haven't touched me for so long. You were so fierce last night, and I was afraid of you. What else do you dare to think about?" She said she didn't want to, but the soft tone, the seductive eyes, and the position in his arms all hinted that she wanted to. Charlotte leaned down and kissed her cherry lips. "Wait a minute." Shinta Tianin pushed Charlotte away, got up from the bed, and then got out of the bed to find clothes and shoes to wear. Charlotte asked curiously, "Where are you going?" Shinta Tianin's face inexplicably turned red. I'm going to the toilet. Charlotte lay down weakly. But Shinta Tianin came over and dragged him up. You come with me. There's no toilet here. You guard me. Help me keep an eye on people. And I'm afraid of snakes. You're so good at catching snakes. Do you know how to crawl on them? Charlotte said mischievously. Shinta Tianin thought for a moment, and suddenly understood what Charlotte meant. Her face suddenly turned red, and then she slapped Charlotte's butt angrily. Hurry up, I can't hold it in any longer. Charlotte, his ex-wife, wanted to go to the toilet, so her ex-husband had to bite the bullet and act as her guardian. Charlotte quickly put on his clothes and went out with Shinta Tianin. He saw a small forest on the side of the village, and then he took Shinta Tianin's hand and walked over. Behind the small forest was the Sanar River, and the water flowed smoothly. Xiale looked around and said, Let's do it here. There's no one nearby. Shinta Tianin walked under a tree, took off his pants, and peed. The strange sound made Charlotte very embarrassed, but he couldn't leave. He had to turn his back and wait for Shinta Tianin to finish. Snake! Shinta Tianin suddenly screamed. Charlotte hurriedly turned around and saw a big, colorful python hanging down from a branch, ready to attack Shinta Tianin, who was peeing under the tree. Shinta Tianin was scared silly, squatting there, not daring to move, and his face was pale. Charlotte rushed up and grabbed the python's vital point. The python didn't expect that someone would dare to attack it directly. Its body fell from the branch and hit Charlotte's body. Its body was at least 300 pounds. When it fell on Charlotte, it immediately wrapped around Charlotte's body. A 300-kilogram python could strangle a cow to death. Although Charlotte's strength had reached a very terrifying level, it was still weaker than a 300-pound python. In addition, he was worried that the python would hurt Shinta Tianin, so he threw himself to the side of the grass with the python. In this short period of time, the python's body had already tightly wrapped around his body. Husband! Shinta Tianin was so scared that she cried. She didn't even have time to pull up her pants. She picked up a stone from the ground and rushed towards Charlotte and the python. However, because she was too anxious and didn't pull up her pants, she just ran a step and fell to the ground. Her mouth was chewing grass, and her snow-white face was facing the sky. Don't come over! Charlotte roared from her. The python opened its mouth and bit towards Charlotte's head. At that moment, the mysterious energy in Charlotte's body suddenly awakened, and the energy field formed by the mysterious energy also appeared. In an instant, the python's thought appeared in his brain, kill him, eat him. The python's thought was very simple, but it was full of killing intent. Charlotte avoided the python's bloody mouth, but the python's body continued to wrap around him. Its strength and huge body made him suffocate, and even the bones in his body felt like they were going to break at any time. With his life threatened, the desire to survive and fight instantly prevailed over morality and reason. Charlotte almost didn't deliberately think, and the energy field on his body produced a suction vortex. In an instant, the python's thought was crushed, along with the bioelectric waves and even the soul energy in its brain. A second later, the python's bloody mouth closed, and its head drooped down powerlessly. Its body also loosened, and it lost all its strength. The python was dead. It wasn't killed, but eaten. Charlotte, who had broken the rule, didn't feel the slightest excitement, only nausea and fear. Although it wasn't a human that was eaten, he still ate it. With the first time, would the second time be far away? Just as Charlotte's heart was filled with self-blame and pain, an unprecedented situation suddenly appeared in his brain and body. Chapter 1178. After eating a 300-pound python's brain, the energy in the python's brain, both spiritual and non-spiritual, became Charlotte's food. When he ate, the mysterious energy began to digest the food. It was an unimaginable process. The mysterious energy hidden in his body was like a chemical decomposer, breaking down the energy swallowed by the python, keeping the useful ones and throwing away the useless ones. During this process, his brain cells became extremely active, and he felt as if he had endless potential. Active and endless potential, this was the embodiment of the brain becoming stronger. Why did the brain become stronger? It was because it had obtained an unprecedented new energy, an energy provided for evolution. Shinta Tianyin got up from the grass. She held her pants in a sorry state, grabbed the stone in one hand, and rushed to Charlotte and the python's side again. "Husband!" Shinta Tianyin cried and threw the stone in her hand at the python's head without any regard for her own safety. "Ha!" There was a cracking sound. The python's head was flattened and its skull shattered, but no brain juice flowed out. Shinta Tianyin was stunned. She looked at the python on the ground in disbelief and then looked at the stone in her hand. She was just a weak woman. How could she smash such a huge python to death with a stone? She couldn't believe such a thing. However, the python was still dead. Suddenly, Shinta Tianyin threw the stone and pounced on Charlotte. She grabbed Charlotte's arm and tried to drag him out from under the python's body. However, her strength was too weak. She couldn't move Charlotte at all, not to mention that there was a 300-pound python on Charlotte's body. Shinta Tianyin fell to the ground, but she was still trying. She kicked the ground with her feet, trying to drag Charlotte out from under the python's body. Charlotte's body did not come out from under the python's body in the end, but her pants fell down again. Her snow-white thighs and snow-white balls were completely exposed to the air, and, Charlotte finally suppressed the restless desire to eat in his body. "Hubby, you!" Shinta Tianyin cried, unable to speak. This was not the first time she had called Charlotte hubby today. In her heart, in her subconscious, her husband had always been Charlotte and could only be Charlotte. "I'm fine." Charlotte let out a long sigh. "Let go of my hand. I'll do it myself." Shinta Tianyin was stunned, but he still let go of Charlotte's hand. Charlotte used both of his hands to support the python's body, and with a forceful push, the 300-pound python immediately rolled off his body. Shinta Tianyin threw himself onto his body, crying his eyes out. "Scare me to death, boo-hoo! Scare me to death, boo-hoo!" Charlotte gently hugged her. "I'm fine. Don't worry. Don't cry. It's okay. I don't want to live here anymore. Let's go back. Boo-hoo!" Shinta Tianyin broke down. She couldn't stop her tears. What made her lose control was not the python's attack, but Charlotte. She thought that Charlotte had been strangled to death by the python. To her, Charlotte had become an indispensable part of her life. How could she lose him? That was no different from killing her. Charlotte laughed, looking carefree. "Didn't you want to follow me to Africa? Are you scared now? Why don't I send you back?" Shinta Tianyin hugged Xia Lei tightly, and then bit him on the shoulder as he choked with sobs. I'm so sad that I'm dying, yet you still came to kill me and bully me." Sob, sob, sob. When the queen cried, it was as if she had become a different person. She walked down the altar and became a delicate woman. Charlotte hugged her tightly too. "Don't worry, don't be afraid. With me by your side, no one can hurt you." Shinta Tianyin let out a soft moan as she raised her beautiful head that was covered in tears, and then she suddenly kissed Xia Lei's lips. Charlotte didn't expect her reaction to be so intense. He stiffened slightly, and after that, his teeth were pried open by Shinta Tianyin's small tongue. Something soft and fragrant appeared in his mouth, and it tangled with his tongue. He was instantly ignited and responded to her. "Give it to me. Here, here." Charlotte suddenly turned over and pressed Shinta Tianyin on top of him. How did things turn out like this? No one knew. It just happened so naturally. Dry wood burned like a raging fire. Water flowed into a canal. In fact, not everything needed a reason. Sometimes, indulging yourself and doing whatever you want is actually a good attitude towards life. Perhaps it was because of the outdoor banquet, or perhaps it was because his ex-wife was too charming, but this time, Charlotte didn't last long. Shinta Tianyin was like a docile rabbit that was curled up in his embrace, reminiscing about the storm-like experience from before. The python's body lay quietly on the grass in the forest. The head that was smashed by Shinta Tianyin's stone finally bled a little, but there was still no brain juice flowing out. Charlotte couldn't help but look at the python's head. He saw a withered and rotten brain tissue. This python was the same as the people that Zhu Xianyue killed, which made him feel disgusted and scared. Tianyin, let's get out of here, Charlotte said. He didn't want to stay in this forest anymore. Shinta Tianyin lay in Charlotte's arms, hugging him tightly and didn't want to get up. Hug me a little longer, okay? I haven't felt the feeling of being hugged by you to sleep for a long time. Charlotte said in her ear, it's already dawn. If we don't leave now, it will be embarrassing if someone comes in and sees us naked. I don't care, but if someone sees us naked, it will be a great loss for me. This sentence worked. Shinta Tianyin reluctantly got up from Charlotte's arms and put on her clothes. After putting on her clothes, she looked at the python's body lying on the ground and said with a lingering fear, Honey, did I really kill it? Things had developed to this point, so Charlotte didn't mind her calling him husband anymore. He said with a smile, Of course you killed it, and you saved me. Shinta Tianyin said doubtfully, It seems so, but where did I get that much strength? Charlotte said, Maybe you used the power of the ancient times. You're lying. Where did the power of the ancient times come from? Shinta Tianyin's fist hammered Xia Lei's chest. It was definitely you who killed it. I only smashed it once. Don't worry about it. Let's go. Charlotte held Shinta Tianyin's hand and left the woods. They bumped into Syed when they returned to the village. Mr. Song, I went to your room to look for you, but you weren't there. Syed smiled. Where did you go? Charlotte said casually, We just walked around and did some morning exercises. I see. Breakfast is ready. Please come with me, said Syed. Charlotte nodded, then held Shinta Tianyin's hand and followed Syed. Fortunately, Shinta Tianyin didn't understand French. Otherwise, she would have blushed when she heard the words morning exercises. After breakfast, Shinta Tianyin was surrounded by a few women in the village, communicating with them in sign language. They kept gesturing, and no one knew what they were saying. Shinta Tianyin wanted to ask Xia Lei to translate for her, but Xia Lei went out with Syed. After walking out of the dining room, Charlotte said, We have to prepare the vehicles we need today. Don't try to save money. We have to get the best off-road vehicles. We also have to prepare spare parts for repairing the vehicles and barrels of gasoline. Syed said, No problem, Mr. Song. Don't worry. In Yaoundé, you can buy anything as long as you have money. Since you've given us so much money, it won't be a problem. Charlotte said, Besides what? Charlotte hesitated for a moment, then said, Can you buy me some energy bars for athletes? What do you want them for? To eat, of course. I like them, Charlotte said. Of course, he didn't want to buy energy bars because he liked them. He wanted to replace regular food. Eating regular food would make his body uncomfortable, but energy bars would make him feel better. They accumulated all the energy a human body needed, and they were concentrated. Using them to satisfy his body's needs was better than eating people. Syed thought that Charlotte's taste was a little strange, but he agreed without hesitation. Okay, no problem. I'll bring them to Yaoundé now. Go ahead. Remember what I told you. Charlotte reminded them again, You're now businessmen. Don't talk to strangers casually, and don't answer any of their questions. Try to take the route without surveillance after you get the vehicles. Got it? Remember, wait for our good news, Mr. Song. Goodbye, Syed whistled. A few young men walked out from different corners of the room. After that, Syed brought a few young black men to Yaoundé. Charlotte was dumbfounded. They're walking to Yaoundé? Do they know how to drive? No one answered his question. Shinta Tianyin managed to escape in the end. She looked worried. They were so friendly, but I don't know what they said. Charlotte held her hand. Let's go back. When Syed and the others come back, we'll leave for Nigeria in the wee hours of the morning. Shinta Tianyin sighed. I really want to stay here for a while. If I don't have to manage the Wanxiang group, and you don't have to manage the Rema group and work for the country, we could just live peacefully in a small village like this. How great would that be? There aren't even lights here. Can you get used to it? Charlotte said. Of course not, but I'm willing to live with you. No matter how hard it is, Shinta Tianyin said. She had really changed. The two returned to the room. Charlotte took out his hacking computer and started writing Super Xiaoqian. Shinta Tianyin lay on the bed with nothing to do. An hour later, she took out a glass bottle hidden in the bedside table. "Hubby, are you thirsty? Drink some water." Charlotte didn't even turn his head. He just put one hand behind his back. Shinta Tianyin placed the glass bottle in Charlotte's hand. Charlotte held the glass bottle to his mouth. Suddenly, he smelled a familiar yet strange smell. He was dumbfounded when he looked at it. He turned back to look at Shinta Tianyin. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Tianyin, Shinta Tianyin opened her collar a little, revealing a towering snow-white chest and a deep ravine in the middle. She said in a lazy tone, "It's so hot. Why is it so hot? I can't take it anymore. I have to take off my clothes." Charlotte, it was all because of the twins. In the early hours of the next day, a convoy of 4 off-road vehicles set off from Riverside Village and headed north in the direction of Nigeria. A new storm was brewing. Chapter 1179. 35 hours later, in Kano City, Nigeria. Kano City was a 1,000-year-old city in Nigeria. It had a long history and many places of interest. It was a famous tourist city, as well as a desert port in West Africa and an important trading city. Although Nigeria was in the midst of war, it was relatively safe in the city. The Nigerian government controlled the city. However, for safety reasons, Charlotte found Shinta Tianyin a set of Muslim women's clothes for her to wear. Shinta Tianyin wore a black robe, a black headscarf, and a black veil. Shinta Tianyin's eyes were hidden, and the risk of being exposed was minimized. Charlotte also changed into a set of Muslim men's clothes. It was a white robe, a brown shirt, and a pair of sunglasses. He looked like an Arab from the Middle East. The 4 SUVs drove in Kano City and finally stopped in front of an ancient building. Charlotte got out of the car and said to Syed, "You guys can go back now. Be careful on the road." Huh? Syed did not expect Charlotte to ask them to go back to Cameroon as soon as they arrived in Kano City. Charlotte did not explain further. He took out his suitcase and Shinta Tianyin's luggage from the trunk and prepared to leave. Syed did not leave. He said, "Mr. Song, I thought we would stay and preach with you. This place is very chaotic. It's not safe for you and your girlfriend to stay here." At that moment, a blonde woman opened the door and walked out of the ancient building. As soon as Syed saw the woman, he drew the sign of the cross and strode forward. He bowed and held the blonde woman's hand, kissing the back of her hand. He seemed very pious throughout the whole process, as if he had seen the Pope. The blonde woman was none other than Giovanna, who had come to Nigeria first. She was the leader of the 4 saints of the rescue organization. At the same time, she was also the leader of the armed knights of the rescue organization. Syed was just the person in charge of a small area, a small priest. In his eyes, someone like Giovanna was really like the Pope. If he knew that the comrade Song Jiang he had been taking care of for 2 days was the founder of the rescue organization, holy thunder, how would he react? "Go back. Cameroon needs you and the brothers you brought," Giovanna said expressionlessly. "Your mission has been completed. Honorable Saintess and the leader of the knights, we will go back now." Syed turned around and got into the car. The people he brought left with him. Giovanna's words were more effective than Xiaolei's, because in their hearts, Xiaolei was a reincarnated god that they would never have the chance to see. On the other hand, Giovanna was the person in charge of the entire rescue association. After Syed left with his men, Giovanna came up and took the suitcase from Charlotte and said respectfully, "Master, come with me." When the members of the Zodiac Squad were by Charlotte's side, Giovanna and the others would call Charlotte boss. When the members of the Zodiac Squad were not by Charlotte's side, Giovanna and the others were more willing to call Charlotte master. This was because they were Charlotte's knights. Calling Charlotte master was more in line with the tradition and creed of the knights that they adhered to. Charlotte didn't say anything. He followed Giovanna into the old building. Shinta Tianyin was a little curious as to why Giovanna called Charlotte master, but she didn't ask. This old building was actually the residence of a resident. The owner of the house wasn't here, but Rosa, Stella, and Teresa were here. There were also some important members of the rescue organization. This building had obviously become a temporary stronghold of the rescue organization in Kano City. We've already received the weapons that Prince Caliph sent. Our people are all outside the city. After entering the living room, Giovanna went straight to the point. We have 100 people. They're all veterans who came from the battlefield. They have a lot of combat experience. Rosa said, the weapons that Prince Caliph sent are enough to arm 200 people. If necessary, we can continue to arm our brothers and sisters in the rescue organization, but that will take time. Charlotte said, 100 veterans is enough. Store the extra weapons and equipment for now. Tell me about the Friendship Mining Company. Did you gather any new information? Teresa spread out a map on the coffee table in the living room. It was a map of Kano City and the surrounding areas. On the map, there was a place circled with a red marker. The circled area was a forest and a mountain. On the map, the words Forest of No Return and Friendship Mining Company were written in English. Teresa pointed to the mountain in the red circle and said, this is our destination, the Friendship Mining Company. We need to pass through the Forest of No Return. Stella said, there's a legend about this forest. It said that the forest is the home of the elves. People who enter will get lost in it and die. There's no way for them to come out alive. Charlotte was slightly stunned. That can't be true, right? Stella smiled. Of course it's not true. I even picked a basket of mushrooms there yesterday. Charlotte was speechless. Stop joking. Giovanna's expression was very serious. Master, we have to pass through this forest if we want to reach the Friendship Mining Company. However, there are a lot of Boca's Sacred Lands armed personnel in this forest. They've cut off the only road through this forest. Charlotte had already seen the road through the Forest of No Return on the map. According to the scale on the map, the road was 210 kilometers long. It would take more than 2 hours to drive, but if they were to walk, it would take a few days. After all, carrying a lot of weapons and equipment through the forest was different from walking normally. Master, you need to make a decision. Rosa said, should we fight our way through the road, or should we walk through the forest? Charlotte frowned. He thought for a moment before saying, it'll be faster if we drive on the road, but we'll become the target of the Boca's Sacred Lands armed personnel who are lying in ambush on both sides of the road. And once a battle breaks out, the Americans who are instigating Boca's Sacred Land behind the scenes will get the news. They might have already prepared Tomahawk missiles for us. You mean to walk through the forest? Teresa asked. Charlotte said, it'll take at least 3 days to walk through a forest like this with weapons and equipment on. We have too many people and a lot of weapons and equipment. It'll take 3 days to cover a distance of more than 200 kilometers. All these factors could lead to us being discovered. And once we're discovered, Boca's Sacred Land won't be a threat to us, but it's different for the American Special Forces. They have armed helicopters, and they'll soon be above us. When that happens, we'll have to face the rocket launchers of Apache or Black Hawk helicopters. Giovanna spread her hands. We can't walk on the road, and we can't cross the forest on foot either. How are we going to get there? Just then, Shinta Tianyin suddenly said, I heard from our geologist that the Wanxiang Corporation had a plan to build a railway in this forest. This way, the Wanxiang Corporation could save a lot of money on transportation costs. At that time, my father was still in charge of the Wanxiang Corporation. He provided 10 million yuan in funding for this plan, but due to opposition from environmentalists, the plan to build the railway was abandoned. Charlotte's gaze shifted back to the map, but he did not see any signs of the railway at all. Shinta Tianyin seemed to have guessed Charlotte's thoughts. She said, Hubby, I can't see it on the map at all because it wasn't built at all. I vaguely remember that it seemed to have been built halfway before it was stopped. The 4 female horsemen looked at Shinta Tianyin strangely. In those few seconds, they were not interested in the railway. They were interested in how Shinta Tianyin addressed him. Hubby. This is the 6th woman to call him hubby. The 4 female horsemen's thoughts were synchronized. However, Charlotte did not notice the changes in the 4 female horsemen's expressions. He said, Tianyin, do you still remember where the railway was built? If it's built halfway, we can at least shorten the time it takes to cross the forest by half. Shinta Tianyin thought for a moment and looked a little vexed. I think I've seen that map with the railway before, but I can't remember it. I've never been to this place before. This is my first time, Giovanna said. Think about it. This is very important to us. Shinta continued to think, but she clearly did not gain anything. Her expression became more and more pained. She wanted to help, but she could not think of anything. With a thought, the mysterious energy hidden in Charlotte's body suddenly awakened, and an energy field was born. This energy field enveloped the 5 women around him. The bioelectric waves and brain waves on their bodies were all captured by the energy field. Their thoughts also appeared in his mind at the same time. Master is really a big pervert. It's not enough that he married 5 wives and had 4 children. He even hooked up with his ex-wife. He's really the scum of men. This was Rose's thought process. How big is Master's penis? Can he satisfy 6 wives? This was Teresa's thought process. When do we end this discussion? I want to pee. I can't hold it in any longer. This was Stella's thought process. Is that railway in the east or west? This was Giovanna's thought process. Of the 4 female knights, other than head knight commander Giovanna, whose thoughts were normal, the thoughts of the other 3 made Charlotte a little speechless. He directly ignored the thoughts of the 4 female knights and directly merged into Shinta thoughts. At that moment, Shinta mind seemed to be in his own, so all of his memories were rummaged through. About a minute later, a yellowish map appeared in his mind. On that map, a railway that crossed 2/3 of the forest of No Return shone brightly. The energy field on Charlotte's body disappeared. Oh no, I can't remember anything. Shinta looked very annoyed. Give me a little more time. No, let me make a phone call. My company has a file. I'll get someone to take a look, and I'll know. However, Charlotte said, no, you can't make a phone call. Right now, the Americans want to steal your mind. All of your company's phones are probably being monitored. If you make a phone call, you'll be discovered. Then what do we do? Shinta looked very anxious. Charlotte said, there's no need. I already know where the railway is. The 5 women's voices were filled with surprise at the same time. Charlotte did not explain. Get ready. We'll leave the city tonight. Chapter 1180. As night fell, a car arrived at the edge of a forest. There were already several cars parked in the open space by the roadside. Those were the cars of the core members of the rescue organization. They had left the city in batches and gathered there. Charlotte got out of the car and took out an equipment bag from the trunk. He carried it on his back and walked toward the cars. Shinta followed closely behind Charlotte. She was wearing a bulletproof vest and a tactical helmet. Charlotte made her wear these, but it was not for her to become a warrior. Instead, it was to protect her. The few cars drove away, and Charlotte led the group into the forest. In the forest, Charlotte saw the 100 veteran warriors of the rescue organization. They ranged in age from 20 to 50 and were all black. There was no need for tactical paint at all. Their faces were the best camouflage for night combat. They were all equipped with Rema group weapons, bulletproof vests, and other auxiliary equipment. These auxiliary equipment were obviously a gift from Prince Caliph. The combat skills of these veterans were certainly not comparable to the U.S. Special Forces, but they had no problem dealing with the armed personnel of Boca's Sacred Land. With the weapons of Rema Group, they could even fight against the U.S. Special Forces. After all, the XL 2500 sniper rifle, Gale assault rifle, and the Hellhound cannon were the kings of infantry weapons. Let's go, Giovanna ordered. The entire team advanced into the depths of the forest. The leader of the team was Giovanna on the surface. Charlotte's identity was still a secret. No one knew who he was or where he came from. They also did not know that the person who was really leading the team, or even the entire rescue organization, was this unassuming young man. Of course, they did not know that his face was also fake. There were no roads in the forest at all, and it was very difficult to walk. Xiaolei and Shinta walked at the very back of the group. Everyone else was very quiet, walking silently. Only this pair of ex-husband and ex-wife's mouths didn't stop, and they kept talking. Hubby, I've always found it strange. How did you know about that railway? Shinto Tianin's voice was heard. Charlotte said, I judged it based on the changes in the terrain on the map. I think your geologists and railway engineers will choose that route to build the railway. So even you aren't sure? Yes, I'm not sure either. Shinto Tianin. This was just the beginning, and she was already having a hard time. If her judgment next month was wrong, then all the pain she had suffered now would be in vain. That was why she was concerned about the problem. Of course, what Charlotte said was not the truth, but he could not tell Shinto Tianin the truth that he had captured her brain and found the map from her memory. Ouch! Shinto Tianin suddenly cried out in pain and sat on the ground. Her hands were covering her ankle, and she seemed to be in great pain. Charlotte walked to her side and asked with concern, What's wrong? Are you limping? Shinto Tianin sometimes nodded her head. Yes, it hurts. I'm really useless. Don't say that. When have you ever suffered like this? Your performance is already very good. Charlotte comforted her, and then he helped her up. Let me carry you. How can you do that? You're carrying dozens of kilograms of equipment. And with me? No. Shinto Tianin repeatedly refused. She felt sorry for Charlotte, and how could she bear to let Charlotte suffer like this? Charlotte had already carried the backpack in front of his chest, and then he squatted down, turned to Shinto Tianin, and said, Don't talk nonsense, get on. Shinto Tianin still did not get on. Charlotte said seriously, We've already fallen behind. If you don't get on, I won't be able to catch up with them. There are many beasts in this primeval forest. Do you want to become their food? You promise me that after coming here, you will listen to everything I say, or I will send you back. Hearing Charlotte's words, Shinto Tianin followed and climbed onto his back, her arms around his neck, and her legs clamped on his waist. Isn't that right? Xiaolei reached over and hugged her perky butt. Then, he stood up and chased after her with large strides. Shinto Tianin's weight was roughly between 100 and 150 kilograms. Together with an equipment bag that weighed 40 kilograms, Xiaolei's body weight shockingly reached 140 kilograms. With this kind of weight, even the world's most powerful special forces soldiers couldn't pass through several dozen kilometers of primordial forest. In fact, not to mention dozens of kilometers, even 2 kilometers would not be possible. However, Charlotte carried Shinto Tianin and his equipment bag for 5 kilometers in one breath, and it took him 45 minutes to complete the journey. He did not even rest during the whole process. The reason why he was able to do this was because the mysterious energy hidden in his body had become stronger. The mysterious energy was like the fuel in a car, constantly providing energy to his body. And the car, under normal driving conditions, did not need to rest. Another reason was that after his body entered a comprehensive evolution, his body almost never felt tired. Whether it was explosive power or endurance, they were far better than before. More importantly, the mysterious energy awakened the vitality in his cells, allowing him to be in a state of bursting potential at any time, and he was extremely energetic. Therefore, in his current state, he could even carry Shinto Tianin across the whole of Nigeria, and he could even carry her to Turkey to watch a movie. Honey, are you tired? You should take a rest. Shinto Tianin had said similar words no less than 20 times in the past 45 minutes. I said, I'm fine, just stay here. Charlotte had said similar words no less than 10 times in the past 45 minutes. But you have carried me for so long. You must be very tired. Put me down and rest. I feel much better. I think I should be able to walk. Shinto Tianin still felt sorry for Charlotte. Charlotte suddenly tightened the hands that were holding Shinto Tianin's pert buttocks, and at least 8 of his 10 fingers squeezed into the gap between her big white balls. Ah! Shinto Tianin exclaimed, and her face suddenly turned red. Charlotte touched her most sensitive place, and she could not stop him. But this was not the most important reason why she blushed. The most important reason was that she had been lying on Charlotte's back all the way, and their bodies had been in contact, and her sensitive place had been harassed by touch. So there was inevitably some unspeakable reaction in a certain part of her body. As time went on, that reaction had become more and more intense, so that a certain part of her body was already very wet, But Charlotte was also very embarrassed and hurriedly let go of his hand, but his fingers felt a little like pinching a wet sponge. That is sweat, Shinatianin said. Well, the weather is really hot. Charlotte echoed her, pretending not to notice anything. Shinatianin moved closer to Charlotte's ear and said with hot breath, "You better put me down, or I will bite you." Charlotte smiled bitterly, and this time he put her down. Shinatianin tried to walk a few steps, and she had already recovered. Charlotte carried Shinatianin and continued to walk, still at the back of the group. Although Shinatianin could walk normally, it was clearly her first time trekking in the primeval forest, so she still had a hard time walking. Because of this, the two of them slowed down a bit, not even as fast as when Charlotte carried her on his back. But when Charlotte asked to carry her again, she refused no matter what. As for the reason, her ex-husband and ex-wife both knew, but they could not say it. 3 hours later, the group rested in an empty space in the forest. Xiaolei opened a map and took a look at it. After comparing it with the map in his mind, he said, "We'll be able to see the railway in 25 kilometers. Once we get on the railway, we'll have to speed up and reach our destination before daybreak." "It would be good if there was a train," Stella said. "Dream on. How could there be a train?" Rosa said with a smile. The conversation between the two women brought a hint of a relaxed atmosphere. Shinatianin, however, could not relax. She took off her New Balance sneakers and rubbed her feet. Her jade-like feet were sore and painful, and there were even blisters on them. Charlotte felt sorry for her. He wanted to go over and help her rub them, but in front of so many people, he could not do it. After all, these people were here to fight a war, and it was a very serious matter. If he and Shinatianin were to flirt and do something messy, it would affect the morale of these veterans. "What about over there?" Giovanna asked Charlotte. Over there was obviously referring to the Zodiac team. Charlotte said, "I think they're almost in position." Do. As soon as he finished speaking, Charlotte's satellite phone rang. The call was from Qian Jun. Charlotte glanced at it and answered the phone. "It's me, speak." "Boss, we have reached the outskirts of Friendship Mining. We are about 50 kilometers away from Friendship Mining, and there is no signal any further. We found patrolling American Special Forces. They are from the Delta Force. Maybe there are also Navy SEALs. The Americans are really serious this time." It was Qian Jun's voice. "Do you have any information on Friendship Mining?" "No, we can't get close for the time being." Qian Jun's voice. "I am calling you to tell you that for some reason, a large number of Boca's Sacred Land armed personnel are gathering at Friendship Mining. On both sides of the road in the forest are people from Boca's Sacred Land. In addition, Boca's Sacred Land has also sent a lot of people to patrol the forest. If you pass through the forest, they may cause you trouble." Charlotte said, "Got it. Wait for us at the rendezvous point. We will arrive early tomorrow morning." "Okay, we will wait for you at the rendezvous point." Qian Jun hung up the phone. Charlotte looked at his wristwatch, then said to Giovanna, "Rest for another 10 minutes, and then we will set off." Giovanna then passed on Charlotte's orders. In the eyes of the veterans of the Rescue Association, this order was given by Giovanna, not Charlotte. "Hubby, eat something." Shinatianin held a bag of beef jerky in his hand and gestured for Charlotte to take it. Charlotte walked over, but he did not take the beef jerky that Shinatianin gave him. Instead, he took out an energy bar from his pocket. "You eat the beef jerky. I will eat this. You have been eating this for the past 2 days. How can you do that?" Shinatianin asked with concern. Charlotte chewed on the energy bar. "Don't worry about me. Hurry up and eat. We only have 10 minutes to rest. By the way, let me carry you later. Your feet are already like this, and you still have more than 20 kilometers to walk. You won't be able to finish it at all." Shinatianin gently bit her cherry lips, then nodded. Tears and embarrassment could not be avoided. So be it. Everything was his anyway. Chapter 1181. 25 kilometers later, an abandoned railway came into view. The railway was full of dead branches, fallen leaves, and vines that grew wildly. It stretched forward, and there was no end in sight. The veteran team of the Rescue Association stepped onto the abandoned railway, and their marching speed suddenly increased. Everyone was running. After more than 10 hours and more than 100 kilometers, they had to run. Otherwise, they would not be able to reach the designated rendezvous point before daybreak. Charlotte ran on the railway with Shinta on his back. His long legs crossed the railway sleepers, and Shinta on his back rose and fell. Her voluptuous breasts smashed against his back once, twice. The four girls had originally wanted to help Xiaolei, but when they saw him carrying Shinta and running more steadily than anyone else, to the point where he didn't even pant for a moment, they gave up on the idea of helping him. There was nothing wrong with him at all. Why would they want to help? Shinta was also shocked. How can he be so strong and tireless? Could it be that this was the reason for evolution? His four children can speak at 2 months old, and their intelligence is comparable to that of children a few years old. These people have inherited his genes. Will our children also inherit his genes? Will they be as smart and strong as his father? At the thought of children, Shinta could not help but be secretly excited. Her children might still be in Charlotte's body, and there was only one way to get the children, and that was excitement would cause certain reactions in the body, and certain reactions would also be reflected when touched by Charlotte's palm. In short, it was a pink vicious cycle. 20 kilometers later, an abandoned building made a choice next to the railway. Giovanna, who was at the front of the team, suddenly stopped and raised her hand. The whole team behind her stopped. More than 100 people did not make a single sound. They stopped at once. After they stopped, some of them lay on the railway sleepers, and some hid in the forest on both sides of the railway. Judging from their reaction, the veterans of the Rescue Association were highly trained in military affairs. Charlotte put Shinta down. You stay here. Don't run around. Shinta nodded. Charlotte sneaked to Giovanna's side. Giovanna was about to send someone to investigate, but he stopped her. He said, "Send me." "Master." Giovanna didn't dare to send Charlotte as a scout. Charlotte said, "Do it." "All right." Giovanna couldn't dissuade Charlotte, so she pretended to make a gesture and asked Charlotte, the scout, to investigate the building in front. The reason why Charlotte volunteered and took the risk to be a scout was that he had already discovered something in the building. The building about 200 meters away from his current position was probably a maintenance and supply station built years ago. It had 2 floors, and there were 4 black men in a room on the lower floor. There were also 2 black men on the roof of the second floor. Although he was 200 meters away and it was dark, he saw the 2 black men standing on the roof as observers at first glance. Then, through X-ray scanning, he saw the 4 black men in the room on the first floor. There were 6 black men in total. They didn't have the same uniform, and they all had AK-47s and other long and short weapons. One of them was even holding an old-fashioned RPG rocket launcher made by the Soviet Union. These armed men were obviously not U.S. Special Forces. They were armed men from Boca's Sacred Land, or the patrols that Qianjun had mentioned. It was not surprising that the armed men of Boca's Sacred Land knew about the railroad, because many of them live in the area and were familiar with the environment. That was why they were guarding the railroad here, to prevent anyone from going to the Friendship Mining Company. Charlotte left the railway and went into the forest on the right side of the railway. While sneaking in the forest, he took out his Viper pistol because it was equipped with a silencer. The forest was dense with trees and vines, but these did not stop Charlotte from approaching the building. He was very fast, giving off the impression that he was an ape or a leopard, not a human at all. In the blink of an eye, Charlotte broke through the distance of more than 100 meters. When he was about 50 meters away from the building, he slowed down. However, it was not because he was afraid of being discovered by the 2 sentries on the roof, but because the armed men from Boca's Sacred Land had buried mines near the building. Xiaolei scanned the ground and saw all the mines buried in the ground nearby. There were a total of 12 mines, all of which were U.S. anti-infantry mines. They were very powerful. If Giovanna had sent people to investigate this building, they would also choose to approach the building from the forest, and the minefield in front of them would be the only way. With 12 mines buried in such a small area, Even the most experienced veterans in the Rescue Association would not be able to avoid stepping on the mines because they could not see the situation underground. Once the veterans of the Rescue Association triggered the mines and exploded, the operation would be completely exposed. Boca's sacred land and the U.S. Special Forces would soon arrive, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Charlotte easily avoided the mines and slowly approached the building. 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters, on the roof, a Boca's sacred land armed man took out a pack of cigarettes and handed one to his companion. His companion took out a lighter and lit the cigarette. There's not even a woman in this damn place. How long are we going to stay here? I don't know. I hate this place too. I'm sure no one will take this path. A bullet suddenly flew over and pierced his right eye socket. His voice stopped abruptly. Half a second later, another bullet pierced into the left eye socket of another person. He did not even have the time to scream before he died. After taking care of 2 sentries in a second, Charlotte continued to sneak into the abandoned building. In a broken house without doors or windows, for Boca's sacred land, armed men were napping. There was a pile of charcoal on the floor of the room. It was the remains of a campfire. Puff, puff, puff. 3 bullets, 3 exploded heads, 3 corpses. All of this happened in an instant. The remaining armed man was awakened by the strange noise. He instinctively grabbed the AK-47 rifle beside him. Just then, he saw a person appear at the window, and that person was holding a gun with a silencer. Puff! A bullet pierced the arm of the last armed man. The AK-47 rifle in his hand fell to the ground. This time, he did not reach for his gun. He also resisted the urge to call for help. He knew very well that the reason he was still alive was that the enemy wanted to keep him alive. Charlotte jumped in through the window and pointed his gun at the head of the last armed man. However, he did not ask any questions. The last armed man looked at Charlotte nervously, waiting for him to reveal the truth. However, after waiting for a long time, Charlotte did not even ask a single question. He only looked at him coldly. His eyes were like 2 whirlpools. It was frightening. Charlotte did not ask questions because there was no need for him to. When he jumped into the house, he had awakened the mysterious energy hidden in his body. When he walked to the side of the last terrorist, his energy field had already captured his bioelectric waves and brain waves, as well as his thoughts. It was also at that moment that his energy field simultaneously invaded the other party's brain and read all the information in the other party's brain. The last terrorist's brain was filled with a mess of things. Scriptures, bombs, beheadings, women, and so on. These information were instantly filtered out by Charlotte's brain. After eliminating the useless junk information, what was left was the information he wanted. The person who made the deal with the Americans was an important figure in Boca's sacred land. His name was Ramalapa. This time, Boca's sacred land's armed forces had dispatched 1,000 armed men. 300 of them were stationed on both sides of the highway. 100 were searching the forest, and another 200 were in the rear area of the Friendship Mining Company. The remaining 400 were guarding the surrounding areas of the Friendship Mining Company. They were equivalent to human shields for the American Special Forces. The Americans had indeed dispatched the Delta Special Forces and the Navy SEALs. They were the most elite special forces. It was not difficult to see how important the Americans were to the mysterious rare metal that they had suddenly discovered. Hey, what do you want to know? The last armed man said tentatively, "Ask away. As long as you don't kill me, I'll tell you everything." What's 1 plus 1? Strangely, what came out of Charlotte's mouth was the same tribal language as the last terrorist. The last armed man was stunned for a moment. It's equal to 2. As soon as he finished speaking, Charlotte's finger moved, and a bullet went through the head of the last armed man. Sorry, you know too much. Charlotte put away his pistol, turned around, and walked out of the door. He then left the building where the meeting was going. When he reached the platform, he waved in the direction he came from. 200 meters away, Xiao Fana put down the binoculars with night vision function in her hands. She curled the corners of her mouth and smiled bitterly. He's still the same. He's taking care of all the targets by himself. Does he think we're people who followed him to enjoy the scenery? Although that was what she said, her reaction was still quite fast. She walked out of her hiding place and waved her hand. Let's go. The rescue club's team moved forward again. Shinta followed the team's footsteps and walked toward the abandoned building. Just now, when Charlotte left, she was undoubtedly the most nervous, afraid, and worried one. She was worried that Charlotte would not come back, and she would have to face the primeval forest alone, as well as the inhumane terrorists who would do anything. What scared her the most was that she would have to live alone in this world from now on. However, all this worry and fear disappeared the moment she saw Charlotte. She threw herself at Charlotte and hugged him tightly. It's okay, we should go, Charlotte said in Shinta ear. Many people are watching us. Only then did Shinta let go of Charlotte. A smile finally appeared on her face. Someone carried out 4 corpses from the abandoned building, and someone climbed onto the roof to check the 2 corpses on the roof. Then, someone carried the corpses and prepared to throw them into the deep forest behind the building. Charlotte stopped them and said, "Don't worry about those corpses. We should go. There are mines buried behind this building, and there must be mines buried in other places. Everyone, be careful." A large group of veterans from the Rescue Society were immediately overwhelmed with shock. He had actually passed through a minefield in the middle of the night and killed 6 terrorists in just a few minutes. The veterans' feelings could no longer be described with words. Chapter 1182. The golden dawn dispelled the darkness, and the entire forest of no return was awakened from slumber. The roars of beasts could be heard coming from the depths of the forest, and the cries of birds could be heard from the treetops. The entire forest was brimming with vitality. The journey of more than 100 kilometers and the destruction of 5 Boka Holy Land armed groups' strongholds happened in the dark of the night. When the sun rose, all these killings and ugly things seemed to have been evaporated by the golden sunlight. They no longer existed. The forest did not end. A huge mountain rose from the ground, and the Wanxiang Group's Friendship Mining Company was on the other side of the mountain. Giovanna, who was close to the tunnel that passed through the mountain, raised a hand. The advancing team immediately stopped and waited for instructions on their next move. The veterans were also eager to stop. They had run for more than 100 kilometers. Although they had rested, the recovery time was far from what they had expended. Sure enough, as soon as Giovanna gave the order to stop and wait for orders, most of the veterans from the Rescue Association either sat down or lay down. None of them wanted to move. Charlotte put Shinta down from his back. Shinta was probably the most relaxed person in the entire team because she spent most of her time on Charlotte's back. Shinta reached out to wipe Charlotte's sweat, but she realized that there was not even a drop of sweat on Charlotte's forehead. On the other hand, she was almost drenched in sweat. She looked at Charlotte affectionately. In her eyes, Charlotte was no longer Charlotte, but a man who was almost like a god. A whistle suddenly came from the mountainside. An experienced veteran got up, and a few of them even unlocked the safety of their Gale assault rifles and entered combat mode. Giovanna said, "Don't be nervous, it's one of our own." Only then did the veteran's nervousness relax a little. Charlotte also whistled in response. A few minutes later, a petite woman walked out of the forest at the foot of the mountain. Her appearance gave off a strange feeling of space-time disorder, because she was holding a Gale assault rifle in her hand and a samurai sword on her shoulder. She covered her face with a black veil, revealing a pair of eyes that were black and cold. She was Akiko Tsukino. She wanted to be the first member of the Zodiac squad that Charlotte would see, so she was the first to appear. And in Chiaki's era, under such circumstances, with her identity as a ninja, she wouldn't even appear. After Akiko Tsukino appeared, Ngimi Khan, Saimu, Urdamu, Yelena, and Alessio also appeared. Although there were only 6 of them, each of them was a super soldier. The veterans from the Rescue Association could not compare to them at all. Who are these people? Don't ask around. None of these people are easy to deal with. In my experience, they are all executioners who kill without blinking an eye. There were some discussions among the veterans, but they quickly calmed down. There were also veterans who had been on the battlefield for a long time and lived under the muzzle of a gun. They knew who they couldn't afford to provoke and who they couldn't get close to like demons. Akiko Tsukino walked over and directly opened her arms to give Charlotte a firm hug. She knew Shinta Tianin's identity, but she couldn't help but do this. Fortunately, the other members of the Zodiac Squad also came over and hugged Charlotte one by one. Otherwise, if she had hugged Charlotte alone, the situation would have been different. However, even if Shinta Tianin knew about her secret relationship with Charlotte, it wouldn't have mattered. Shinta Tianin would not be jealous of Akiko Tsukino, the seventh woman, for the sake of the other 5 women. Charlotte's women were almost enough to form a football team. If they all wanted to be jealous, they might as well open a vinegar factory. Moreover, she didn't have the capital or the right to be jealous of Charlotte. Alessio was the last person to hug Charlotte. The Italian greeted Charlotte in Italian, then smiled and said, "Boss, I'm back." Charlotte also said in Italian, "Is your injury okay?" Alessio smiled and said, "I can kill a cow now." Charlotte smiled and said, "That's good. There will be time for you to show off your skills." He was the dragon of the Zodiac Squad, and also the assaulter of the Zodiac Squad. He was the most ferocious and the one who didn't care about his life. He had been injured during the mission against the Hospital Knights, and was now back. With the addition of Liang Xiao, the current members of the Zodiac Squad could be considered to have gathered. Charlotte had thought of adding Giovanna and the other 3 to the Zodiac Squad to replace Amanda, Pu Taiyong, Bagu, and Marcus. However, he later realized that the development of the Zodiac Squad would be more valuable if they didn't join. However, regardless of whether they joined or not, the 4 female knights and the Zodiac Squad were still a team. "Boss," Qian Jun said, "there's no signal after entering the tunnel, and there's no signal at the mountainside and the top of the mountain. This tunnel is patrolled by a patrol team every 2 hours. In addition, there are at least 100 Boka, sacred land members, in this area." Charlotte said, "I know." "You know?" Qian Jun looked surprised. Charlotte said, "There are 100 armed Boka, sacred land members on this railway line, 300 on both sides of the highway, and 200 behind Friendship Mining. In addition, there are another 500 outside Friendship Mining. They act as human shields for the American Special Forces. The person who made the deal with the Americans is called Ramalafa. He's an important leader of Boka's sacred land." "Where did you get this information?" Saimu could not help but ask. He, as an intelligence officer, had not been able to get this information. Charlotte had been running on the railway all night. How could he have gotten this information? Xiaolei said, "I destroyed a sentry post and left one alive. Then, I interrogated him and told him all this." The truth was that he had asked the person what 1 + 1 was, and the person had honestly answered the correct answer. Then, he had fired on the excuse that the person knew too much. In this case, the terrorist was not scary at all compared to him. The women from the Gray and Russo families walked over. Giovanna said, "Boss, we've gathered. What's the next step?" Charlotte said, "Let everyone go into the forest and hide, eat, and rest. They're too tired. If they encounter the enemy, they won't be able to fight. Let's wait for them to eat and sleep before we take action at night." "No problem. We'll go now," Giovanna said. Rosa, Stella, and Teresa also left with Giovanna. The 4 of them had always been a team of 4. Charlotte stopped them. "Wait, boss, what else?" Giovanna asked. Charlotte glanced at Shinta Tianin and then said, "Tianin, you go with them." "Giovanna, this is the mission I'm giving you. Protect her no matter what." Giovanna was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Shinta Tianin said anxiously, "I don't want to go with them." "Where are you going?" "I want to go with you." Charlotte said solemnly, "Tianin, do you want me to bring you to the battlefield? I'm going to destroy the signal jamming device of the Americans. There will definitely be a battle. Do you want to die there?" Shinta Tianin felt fear. In this kind of environment, the only person she could trust was Charlotte. Charlotte walked to her side and whispered in her ear, "Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for the child in your stomach." Shinta Tianin didn't dare believe what she had heard. "Be obedient and follow Giovanna." You can trust them. Charlotte patted Shintatianin's shoulder and then turned to leave. Shintatianin didn't follow Charlotte. Charlotte's words had worked. In the past 2 days, she and Charlotte had used up the bottle of antidote. According to Tang Yuyin's experience, she was most likely pregnant. In this kind of environment, how could she not think about the child in her stomach? Although it was only a guess and had not been confirmed, even if there was only a 1% possibility, she was not willing to take the risk. It was every woman's nature to protect her child, and she was no exception. Why are you still standing there? Let's go. Charlotte walked to the tunnel entrance. We're going to fight a tough battle again, Engyumi-kan said. Then he smiled again. But I like it. Boss, do you know where their signal jamming device is? Sayamo asked. Charlotte said, they must have built a radar station, and the signal jamming device must be at the highest point in this area. I don't think it's difficult to find them. If you can't find them, leave one alive, and I will interrogate them. Akiko Tsukino said, if you want to keep them alive, there will be too many. Leave it to me. I will definitely catch a valuable person alive for you. Charlotte smiled at her. Akiko Tsukino changed the topic. Boss, why did you bring your ex-wife here? Charlotte, haha. Akiko, are you jealous? Engyumi-kan said with a smile. Akiko Tsukino's almond-shaped eyes widened in anger. Do you want to die? Well, I didn't say anything. Engyumi-kan shrugged. Charlotte smiled bitterly. She's the boss of friendship mining. The Americans robbed her mine. We can't get it back without her. What can she do? Yelena's voice was heard. Charlotte said, she can do things that we can't. Think about it. Even if we killed the American Special Forces and the Friendship Mining Company and the armed forces of Boca's Sacred Land, whether it's Boca's Sacred Land or the United States, they can mobilize more combatants to rush here at any time. With just the few of us and the few people from the Rescue Association, can we defend this place? This was Africa, and there were no China troops stationed here. Once a war broke out, the United States could send reinforcements endlessly, but he only had a few people on his side. Even if they took back friendship mining, they wouldn't be able to defend it. Diplomatic negotiations and protests? Yelena said. Charlotte smiled. That is a step that will only be done when there is no other way. Before that, I have my own plan. You still have a plan? Alessio looked very interested. What is it? Charlotte said, it is still brewing in my mind. I will tell you when I perfect it. His plan had actually been perfected long ago, but he couldn't tell the members of the Zodiac team. Some of the 6 members of the Zodiac team shrugged, some laughed, and some were expressionless. They were not surprised that Charlotte would give such an answer, because this was Charlotte's style. The tunnel was dark, and there was no exit in sight. The 7 of them were murderous. Chapter 1183. The tunnel was 1 kilometer long, and there was a big iron gate at the other end. The rusty iron gate blocked the railway and also blocked the light from the outside of the tunnel. Why would such an iron gate be built on the railway to close the tunnel? The reason was unknown. When they were 200 meters away from the iron gate, Charlotte's line of sight penetrated the iron gate and saw the situation outside. There was a sentry post outside the door, and there were 14 armed terrorists. 2 of them were cooking by the railway, 2 were smoking on the railway, and 2 were urinating. The remaining 8 were chatting and cleaning their guns. Charlotte retracted his line of sight and said, "There's a checkpoint at the entrance of the tunnel with 14 terrorists." The members of the Zodiac squad looked at Charlotte with strange eyes. Although no one said anything, they obviously had the same question in their hearts. "How'd he know?" Charlotte said, "It's the one who told me. Of course, he also got a reward. I gave him a quick death." The 7 people quietly came to the iron gate. The iron gate was not locked, it was just closed. But this was also a problem. Once the people in the tunnel opened the gate, the terrorists outside would notice. If the other side opened the gate, it would be very troublesome even if they were not hit by the bullets, because the sound of gunshots would attract more enemies. Facing such a situation, the members of the Zodiac squad frowned and felt that it was tricky. After all, there were not a few terrorists outside, but more than a dozen. It was impossible to kill them in 1 or 2 seconds. Even if it was 1 or 2 seconds, It would be enough for the other side to shoot to warn the terrorists elsewhere. Charlotte stood by the gate and said, "Relax." The members of the Zodiac squad looked at Charlotte with puzzlement. But at this moment, Charlotte's eyes changed. They were like two black holes suspended in the starry sky. His aura also changed. It was indescribable. Without any warning, the 6 members of the Zodiac squad walked toward Charlotte. Charlotte suddenly reached out and opened the gate. The gap of the gate became bigger. More than a dozen terrorists at the exit of the tunnel looked over, and some even went to get their guns. Tut tut tut. 222 bullets flew out from the gap of the door. The bullets came from different assault rifles and pierced the bodies of the targets in different positions. Fresh blood splattered, and the ground was littered with corpses. From start to finish, the entire battle took less than 2 seconds. More than a dozen terrorists in different positions were killed at almost the same time. They didn't even have the chance to fire a shot. Moreover, this was under the situation where there was a large iron gate between them. "Well done," Charlotte said as he walked out of the tunnel. Behind him, the 6 members of the Zodiac squad were still in a daze, their faces filled with astonishment. Each of them was indeed a super soldier, and each of them could hold their own. However, the battle just now was not a problem that could be solved by a single person's powerful combat power. That was because the day before yesterday, they had killed the other party without being able to open fire. That required extremely high coordination. But they were separated by an iron door, and they didn't even know what the terrorists outside looked like or where they were. How could they shoot at different targets at the same time the moment Charlotte opened the door? Most importantly, they all hit their targets. This kind of thing seemed strange and unpredictable, but for Charlotte, it was just a simple use of his energy field. He saw the position of the terrorists outside the door, and then he used the mysterious energy field to synchronize the thoughts of the 6 Zodiac squad members. In those 2 seconds, he had transformed the 6 members of the Zodiac squad into himself. He understood the situation. He opened fire, and he ended the battle. This was the reverse invasion of the brain, turning the members of the Zodiac squad into himself. In this battle, Charlotte also gained a lot. The effective range of his energy field was 10 square meters, maybe a little more, but it wouldn't exceed 11 square meters. He couldn't calculate the exact number because his energy field wasn't static. It was invisible and colorless, moving like a wave. Did the boss do something to us? Siamus suddenly asked. Horatio shrugged. I think it was instinct. I think so too, Yelena said. He didn't do anything. He just opened the door. Akiko Tsukino walked out of the tunnel and said, "Stop talking nonsense. Let's go." 10 minutes later, Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac squad dragged all the corpses into the forest and hid them. Then, they continued along the railway. The mountain where the tunnel was located was more than 40 kilometers away from their destination, the Friendship Mining Company. If they walked normally, it would take several hours. If they ran, it would take about 3 hours. However, the closer they got to the Friendship Mining Company, the more Boca Holy Land Patrol personnel there were. There might even be American elite special forces, so they didn't dare to move too fast. Along the way, Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac squad were very cautious. They cleared all the Boca Holy Land checkpoints they encountered because they wanted to clear the obstacles for the veterans of the Rescue Association. The American Special Forces blocked all signals to prevent the news from getting out. However, this also made it easier for Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac squad to barge in unscrupulously and kill all the enemies along the way. In the afternoon, Charlotte raised his hand. The members of the Zodiac squad who were walking quickly stopped in their tracks. There was an abandoned building built beside the railway about a kilometer in front of them. Like the building they had passed before, it was also a supply station built for the railway. Charlotte saw the people guarding the building. There were 8 of them. They were not Boca Holy Land's armed forces, but American Special Forces. He also saw the triangular badges formed by swords and lightning bolts on the Special Forces. They were all members of the Delta Special Forces. Although there were only 8 of them, They were clearly more difficult to deal with than all the Boca Holy Land's armed forces combined. Charlotte left the railway and climbed up a tall tree like an ape. Looking into the distance, he saw a flat valley in his field of vision. A building stood in the middle of the valley. That was the Wanxiang Group's Friendship Mining. The straight-line distance was about 5 kilometers. Even from such a distance, he could still see the China Friendship Mining signboard on the factory's main gate. His vision had also increased as his body evolved. Charlotte shifted his gaze to the left of the Friendship Mining. At the foot of the mountain was a mining area. There was some mining machinery parked there, but no workers operating it. On the top of the mountain, there was something unnatural. It looked like a radar car, but it was more than 8 kilometers away, so he couldn't see it clearly. As he looked into the distance, Charlotte gained a new understanding of his X-ray vision. His telescopic vision was already close to 8 kilometers. Charlotte came down from the tree and squatted on the ground. He used a branch to draw a simple map on the ground. The Friendship Mining is about 5 kilometers ahead. There's a checkpoint 1 kilometer in front of us. The people guarding there are not Boca Holy Land's armed forces, but the Delta Special Forces of the United States. There are 8 of them, 2 on the roof, 2 on the railway, and 4 in the building. Alessio pursed his lips. Killing them should make me very excited. Charlotte said, as usual, don't let them shoot. There are a lot of enemies nearby. We don't know how many special forces the United States has sent. In this situation, we must not alarm them. Qianjun frowned. It's not difficult to kill them, but it's difficult to make them not shoot. After all, the Delta Special Forces are the most powerful special forces in the world. Even a person like Qianjun had a frown. It was easy to imagine the difficulty of completing the mission. Let me go. Akiko Tsukino said, I'll try. She was a ninja and the assassination expert of the Zodiac, but she didn't have 100% confidence in completing the mission. Charlotte said, you come with me. Qianjun, Siamu, you two sneak from the left side of the railway and kill the 2 targets on the railway. Engami Khan and Alessio, the 3 of you sneak from the right side and kill the 2 targets on the roof. Yelena, you're responsible for checking the time. 6 minutes later, you whistle as the signal. Qianjun, Siamu, Engami Khan, and Alessio, you two take action at the same time. Leave the 4 targets in the house to me and Akiko. No problem. Yelena looked at the multifunction watch on her wrist. The countdown starts in 10 seconds. Move. Charlotte and Akiko Tsukino left the railway and entered the forest. The 2 ran in the forest like a fox. The running of the female ninja was very pleasing to the eye. The pair of big breasts swayed left and right in her clothes, jumping up and down, more like waves than waves. 3 minutes, 800 meters. Every second, they covered almost 5 meters. It was not an exaggeration to describe their speed as wind. When approaching the building, Charlotte suddenly stopped. There are landmines. Follow me. Akiko Tsukino didn't have any problems. She followed Charlotte's footsteps and passed through the minefield. The 2 approached the building. At this time, there was only 1 minute left before the start of the mission. Charlotte's vision penetrated the walls of the building and saw the situation inside. Then he pointed to a room for Akiko Tsukino. There's one in that room. I'll leave it to you. Akiko Tsukino nodded. Then she crouched and crawled under the window of the room. Xiaolei then went to another room. In that room, there were 3 targets. The 3 Delta Special Forces were currently enjoying the pleasures of marijuana. The 8 Special Forces soldiers were divided into 2 shifts, with 4 people in each shift. A whistle was suddenly blown. On the railway, Qianjun, Engami Khan, Siamu, and Alessio opened fire at the same time. The 4 Delta Special Forces on the railway and the roof also fell to the ground. The 3 Special Forces smoking marijuana in the room suddenly threw away the cigarette in their hands. They grabbed the assault rifle beside them. However, their action stopped here. At that moment, it was as if their brain power was cut off. Charlotte appeared from under the window. The Viper pistol in his hand fired twice. He effortlessly killed 2 of the Delta Special Forces. His energy field once again invaded the brain of the one left alive, stealing the information stored in the brain of the one who was still alive. At the same time, Akiko Tsukino suddenly appeared from under the window. The Delta Special Forces soldier who was peeing in the other room hurriedly pulled out his pistol, but his speed was a bit slower than Akiko Tsukino. Just as he pulled out the pistol from the holster, a shuriken stabbed into his forehead. She flipped into the room and took the shuriken from the corpse's forehead. She prepared to help Charlotte, but when she arrived at the room, she saw 2 corpses. There was also a person standing like a log. The Special Forces soldier was scared silly. He didn't dare to move. Charlotte suddenly pulled the trigger. Pooh! The last Delta Special Forces soldier fell to the ground. He had already contributed all the information in his brain, and that was the end of his value. We should go, Charlotte said. He didn't say anything else. So cool. The female ninja's eyes seemed to have many little stars. Chapter 1184. For Special Forces teams, 2 from the Delta Special Forces, 2 from the SEALs, a total of 80 people, and another 40 from the CIA field agents. The total number of people occupying Friendship Mining reached 120. There was indeed a radar station at the top of the mountain, but it was also a signal jamming station. It turned the area within a 50-kilometer radius into a signal blind zone. The people outside could not contact the people inside, and the people inside could not contact the people outside. It was not hard to understand. This land was Nigerian territory, and the UA Special Forces and CIA field agents occupied it. This was actually an act of invading a sovereign country. If the international community found out, the United States would be condemned by the whole world. The Western values that they flaunted and promoted would be worthless. Currently, a mining company was under the complete control of the UA Special Forces and CIA field agents. The employees of Friendship Mining were all confined within the factory, and there were 5 deaths and 17 injuries. The injured and dead employees were all Chinese. The ones who did it were the CIA field agents. The reason was that the 5 Chinese workers tried to use electronic components as loyalty transmitters to send a distress signal to the outside world. They executed them, and some people resisted, but they were suppressed by the CIA agents, which resulted in the 17 injured. Based on the current situation, the UA would not leave a single survivor, and Boca's Sacred Land would be the scapegoat in the end. If the UA and Boca's Sacred Land were placed in front of the world as suspects, would the world believe the UA or Boca's Sacred Land? The answer did not require much thought. There were 2 people commanding the occupation of Friendship Mining. One was the leader of the CIA, Williams, and the other was the leader of the 5 largest arms dealers in the UA, the new CEO of Lockheed Martin Corporation, Kirsten. This was the information Charlotte dug out from the Delta Special Forces soldier's brain. However, because his rank was too low, the Special Forces soldier did not know if Williams or Kirsten were at Friendship Mining. The members of the Zodiac squad took care of the bodies and changed into the Delta Special Forces uniform. Every Delta Special Forces soldier had a communicator on them, but there was no signal. They blocked all signals, so why do they still have communicators? Simon was puzzled. Charlotte said, "My guess is that they will open a specific channel every once in a while and close it after the conversation. After all, they also need to know the situation in this area. If they even cover their own eyes and ears, then they will also become blind. Then let's take it. As long as we take it with us, we can receive their communication." Yelena inserted the communicator into the communicator sleeve on her shoulder. Charlotte left the railway and led his men into the forest. Then he advanced towards the hill on the left of the Friendship Mining Company. 5 kilometers away from the Friendship Mining Company, the number of enemies increased. Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac squad advanced even slower. Regardless of whether it was the American Special Forces Patrol Team or the Boca's Sacred Land Patrol Team, as long as they encountered them, no one would survive. Battle, battle, endless battle. Slaughter, 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 slaughter. Charlotte was becoming more and more adept at using the energy field. When he encountered a patrol team with many people, he would invade the minds of the members of the Zodiac squad and turn them into a part of him. This kind of battle mode was equivalent to splitting himself into 7 people to fight. His thoughts were unified, his actions were unified, and his accurate marksmanship was terrifying. Who could match him? At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac squad arrived at the foot of the hill. This place was less than 3 kilometers away from the Friendship Mining Company. This hill is about 2,500 meters above sea level. It will take us 2 hours to climb up, and then we have 10 minutes to end the battle. Charlotte began to formulate a battle plan. Then when do we destroy the radar station? Siamu asked. Charlotte said, after we kill the people at the radar station, you guys stay there. What about you? Akiko Tsukino's eyes were filled with worry. In fact, not only Akiko Tsukino, but the other members of the Zodiac squad also had a hunch that their leader was going to act alone again. Sure enough, as soon as Akiko Tsukino's voice fell, Charlotte said, I want to enter the Friendship Mining Company. You guys wait for my signal to destroy the radar station. Once the radar station is destroyed, the Americans in the Friendship Mining Company will know, and then they will attack you guys. You guys need to send a signal to Giovanna. When Giovanna and the others come over, they will attack the Americans and the Boca Sacred Lands armed forces from behind. Angami made a face and said, Boss, there are more than 1,000 enemies. Among them, there are more than 100 elite CIB agents, Delta Special Forces, and SEALs. Are you asking us to be Rambos? Charlotte said faintly, Don't worry, they can't win with me around. These words seemed very domineering, but if Charlotte hadn't taken the last AE capsule, he wouldn't have said such words. The reason was very simple, because he didn't have the confidence to do so. After taking the last AE capsule, his body would enter a comprehensive evolution, and he would have an energy field formed by mysterious energy. Those terrorists and special forces would not be on the same level as him. He could crush them like Zhu Xianhua. Then it's decided, Yelena said. Let's go. Qianjun said. Charlotte nodded. Let's go. At 5 in the afternoon, Charlotte and the members of the Zodiac squad appeared in a dense forest on the top of the mountain. Outside the dense forest was a man-made clearing in the forest. A radar vehicle and an electronic interference vehicle were parked in the clearing. There was no road on the mountain, so these 2 vehicles were obviously airlifted. Only the United States had the ability to airlift a radar vehicle to a mountain in West Africa. This was the radar station. Guarding this radar station was a Sea Wave Commando squad of 20 people. There were also a few radar soldiers, who were also technical soldiers of the SEAL Commando squad. Boss, is it still the same standard? At the edge of the forest, Akiko Tsukino asked. The standard she was referring to was the standard that the enemy couldn't shoot. There were more than 20 people on the other side, and there were radar soldiers who could send a distress signal to headquarters at any time. The difficulty of this battle was obviously higher than all the previous battles, and it was even impossible to complete. Charlotte seemed very relaxed. You guys wait for me here. What about you? Akiko Tsukino asked. I'll go talk to them first. Charlotte got up and walked out of the forest. Behind him, the 6 members of the Zodiac squad stared at his back dumbfoundedly, their heads filled with big and small question marks. What's wrong with our boss? Ngumi finally managed to find a word to ask. Yeah, what's wrong with him? Siamus said, We haven't seen each other for a while. Why does boss seem like a different person? Alessio said. Qianjun said, He's become stronger. Our Akiko has the most right to say this. Erdamu said with a smile. Akiko Tsukino turned around and gave Erdamu the middle finger. Erdamu shrugged his shoulders. A good man doesn't fight with women. Charlotte had just walked out of the forest when he was discovered. At this time, the members of the Zodiac squad began to move towards the predetermined location. Stop! A SEAL captain shouted at Charlotte. Why are you here? At the edge of the forest, the members of the Zodiac squad raised their storm assault rifles, ready to fire at any time. The captain's voice immediately attracted the attention of the other SEAL squad special forces. They surrounded him from different directions. They all raised their M14 EBR assault rifles and locked on at Charlotte with vigilance. There was no road on this mountain. This radar station, including them, had flown here on a Hercules transport plane. They didn't climb the mountain at all. Therefore, although Xia Lei was wearing the uniform of the Delta Special Forces, for a Delta Special Forces soldier to appear here, this in itself was worthy of suspicion. Charlotte raised his hands and walked over. Don't be nervous. Don't misunderstand. Something happened at the headquarters. Let me verify it. What's the situation? A SEAL commander asked. Charlotte continued to walk towards them. There's a problem with the communication equipment. We lost contact with the patrol team. So, Mr. Kirsten sent me to ask you guys about it. He wants you guys to solve the problem as soon as possible. Charlotte's answer made the SEAL Squad Special Forces soldier lower his guard. After all, Kirsten was the commander of this operation. This secret was only known by a few people. Even the higher-ups of Boca's Sacred Land didn't know. This Delta Special Forces soldier said that he was sent by Kirsten. This meant that he was probably one of Kirsten's men. Moreover, he kept his hands raised and didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. Come with me. We'll go and ask those radar soldiers. They should know the situation, the SEAL Squad commander said. Charlotte walked in front of the SEAL Squad Special Forces soldier. He smiled and said, "Why don't we go together?" Everyone followed him and walked towards the radar vehicle. At the edge of the forest, the members of the Zodiac Squad were all stunned. How could this work? Are the Special Forces soldiers of the SEAL team stationed here pigs? However, what surprised them even more was just the beginning. The group of SEAL Squad Special Forces soldiers stayed by Charlotte's side. They were not more than 5 steps away from him. No one said a word, and no one raised their guns. Charlotte walked to the door of the radar vehicle. He suddenly pulled out the Viper pistol and fired at the radar soldiers in the vehicle. Blood splattered everywhere. Several radar soldiers collapsed in the vehicle. They died in an inexplicable manner. Akiko Tsukino suddenly rushed out regardless of everything. Following closely behind her, the other members of the Zodiac Squad also rushed out of the edge of the forest. As they ran, they fired at the group of SEAL Squad Special Forces soldiers. One by one, the SEAL Squad Special Forces soldier fell to the ground. Blood flowed everywhere. But even after all the SEAL Squad Special Forces soldiers were shot to the ground, none of them raised their guns to fight back. The battle ended in such a strange way. It was all like a dark joke. Akiko Tsukino looked at Charlotte worriedly. She didn't know why, but for the first time, she didn't dare to approach Charlotte. In her eyes, Charlotte seemed to have become a stranger. His eyes were like a black hole in the universe, merciless, cold, and devouring everything. Akiko Tsukino wasn't the only one who felt this way. The other members of the Zodiac Squad felt the same way. Their reverence for Charlotte was directly upgraded to fear. Charlotte closed his eyes. After a few seconds, he opened them again. His face revealed a trace of a smile. "Why are you looking at me? This was my plan. You guys did a good job." The members of the Zodiac Squad were speechless. "Clean up this place. Siamu, take a look at the radar soldiers' operating procedures. When the time is right, open the channel they want to open," said Charlotte. "Okay, no problem," said Siamu. "Then that's it. I'll go to friendship mining now. Wait for my signal to destroy the radar station and the signal jamming vehicle." After saying this, Charlotte walked down the mountain. This time, no one said anything to persuade him. Was it necessary? Chapter 1185. As night fell, the lights in Friendship Mining were turned on. Not only were there ordinary lighting fixtures, but there were also several searchlights. The entire factory and the surrounding areas were illuminated. The searchlights could not help the special forces and agents occupying the area see the situation in the forest, but there was one person in the forest who knew the entire factory like the back of his hand. That person was Charlotte. A group of Boca Sacred Land armed personnel walked under the tree and chattered. It was not quiet at all. Not only were there American military personnel in the area, but there were also armed personnel from Boca Sacred Land. Boca Sacred Land had a large number of armed personnel, so the hard work of wandering in the forest naturally fell to them. Until now, Boca's sacred land still did not know that their personnel responsible for guarding the railway had been killed. The Americans in Friendship Mining also did not know that some of their people had been killed. Jamming the signal was a double-edged sword. Moreover, with more than 1,000 people guarding a primeval forest with a radius of more than 200 square kilometers, it was an impossible task in itself. However, neither Boca's sacred land nor the Americans were worried about anything because there were no gunshots in the forest. This was also the reason why Charlotte had set the condition of not letting the other party fire in every battle. It was also because he had done it in the previous battles that he could sneak here quietly. The Boca's Sacred Land Patrol walked out of the forest and walked along a road to their camp. It was a tent area set up outside the factory. There were hundreds of tents densely packed together. The open space was also full of armored vehicles modified from pickup trucks. Some were equipped with heavy machine guns, some with anti-aircraft machine guns, and some with cannons that fired liquefied gas canisters. There were all kinds of them, and it looked messy. The Americans did not let Boca's Sacred Land's armed personnel into the factory. It was not difficult to understand the Americans' motive. They did not want Boca's Sacred Land's people to know that Friendship Mining had discovered a rare metal mine. Charlotte climbed down from the tree and walked straight to the wall on the side of the factory gate. There was a checkpoint at the gate and a makeshift sentry box on the wall. Each sentry box had a searchlight and an armed Special Forces soldier. Charlotte was quickly discovered. "Hey, brother, why are you here alone?" The Special Forces soldier on the sentry post shouted at Charlotte. He raised the M14 EBR assault rifle in his hand, ready to fire at any moment. The M14 EBR assault rifle was a rifle used by the U.S. Navy SEALs. The gun in his hand had already revealed his identity. He was a Special Forces soldier from the Navy SEALs. He was not familiar with Charlotte, who was from the Delta Special Forces. In such an environment, it was not strange for the Special Forces soldier to have such a reaction when a stranger suddenly appeared. "Hey, dude, you want some weed? I'll give you a discount," Charlotte said with an American accent as he strode to the corner. The Special Forces soldier at the sentry post put away his gun. "How about one for free?" "No problem. My goods are very good." Xiaolei had already walked to the corner of the wall. He raised his head, and when his eyes met the eyes of the Special Forces soldier in the sentry post, they suddenly changed. They were so dark that there was no white in his eyes, like a dead star. The Special Forces soldier in the sentry post raised the searchlight and aimed it in the direction of the mountain on the left. Then he turned off the light, turned it on, and turned it on again. After repeating it once, he stopped and returned the searchlight to its original position. "Go to sleep," Charlotte said. The Special Forces soldier in the sentry post closed his eyes and fell to the ground. Charlotte turned and ran. In the blink of an eye, he rushed into the forest where he was hiding. Then he climbed up the towering tree like a monkey. Just as he hid in the canopy of the tree, a loud explosion came from the top of the mountain on the left. Boom! The flames of the explosion shot up into the sky and dyed a large part of the sky red. Then there was another violent explosion. The shock wave from the explosion could be felt even from a few kilometers away. The members of the Zodiac team on the top of the mountain had already blown up the radar vehicle and the signal jamming vehicle. A piercing alarm sounded in the Friendship Mining Company. Dozens of Special Forces soldiers rushed out of the factory gate. The members of the Boca Holy Land Armed Group were also mobilized. They ran out of the camp next to the factory and ran toward the mountain on the left with their weapons at the command of their leaders. The Special Forces of the Delta and Navy SEALs moved the fastest. They disappeared into the dense forest in the blink of an eye. Then came the armed forces of the Boca Holy Land. They had more people and were like a huge pack of wolves moving. Xiaolei hid on top of the towering tree, not moving at all. When someone ran under the tree, he even blocked his breathing. It was this time that he blocked his breathing. He was surprised to find that he didn't need to breathe that much. He blocked his breathing for 2 minutes. His lungs didn't even feel the burning sensation of suffocation. The mysterious energy hidden in his body seemed to be omnipotent. It flowed in his blood and could even replace the function of oxygen. After leaving here, I must go to the sea or the lake to try how long I can dive. If I don't need to breathe, am I still a F***king human? When this thought popped up in his mind, Charlotte couldn't help but smile bitterly and self-deprecatingly. Others yearned for more power, but he yearned for Long Bing's milk. Rumble, rumble, the unique sound of a helicopter cutting through the air could be heard. Xia Lei then collected his chaotic thoughts and shifted his gaze over. He saw an Apache helicopter that had already taken off, as well as a Chinook transport aircraft, with 20 Delta Special Task Force soldiers sitting in the belly of the aircraft. There was no need to think about what these two helicopters would bring. If they didn't stop them, the members of the Zodiac team wouldn't be able to survive. The Apache helicopter flew over their heads, with the Chinook following closely behind. An XL 2500 sniper rifle silently stood up in the treetops. The gun barrel was equipped with a silencer. The XL 2500 sniper rifle's barrel didn't extend out of the treetops. It was separated by a layer of dense leaves. Shio! A steel-core armor-piercing bullet shot out from the XL 2500 sniper rifle's muzzle and pierced into the Apache's fuel tank. The scorching bullet instantly ignited the fuel tank, and the Apache's body started to burst into flames. Without waiting for it to take emergency landing measures, there was a loud explosion, and the Apache helicopter disintegrated in the air. The Chinook transport plane that followed closely behind the Apache helicopter took emergency measures. The pilot controlled himself to move sideways. At that moment, a steel-core armor-piercing bullet pierced into the Chinook transport plane's fuel tank. Boom! The Chinook transport plane also exploded in the air and crashed to the ground. Then, an even more intense explosion occurred. The Delta Special Forces did not even see the enemy before they met God. This was war. It was cruel. Charlotte climbed down from the tree and went straight to the sentry post he had been to before. He sprinted and sprinted. When he approached the corner of the wall, Charlotte suddenly jumped up from the ground and swooped up to the 3-meter-high wall. Then, he grabbed the fence of the sentry post with both hands and jumped lightly onto the sentry post. Now, he was the sentry of the sentry post. A large group of special forces rushed out of the factory gate. They split into two groups and went straight to the two crash sites. Their actions were swift and professional. A man's voice came from the communicator. What happened? F***CK. Where are the enemies? Make them come out and kill them. The communication had been restored, but the reason was that the members of the Zodiac team had blown up the signal jammer. There were many voices coming from the communicator, but no one could clearly tell where the enemies were. Based on the situation just now, the enemies were obviously at the top of the mountain. But just now, the two helicopters had exploded at the entrance. The enemies seemed to be nearby and could attack at any time. No one could give an accurate judgment. The whole situation was a mess. In the midst of the chaos, Charlotte left the sentry post and entered the Friendship mining factory. The explosion at the top of the mountain and the explosion of the helicopters had drawn almost all the special forces out of the factory. The only ones controlling the factory were the CIB field agents. Therefore, the huge factory was very quiet. There was not a single person in the places where the lights shone, let alone the places where the lights did not shine. It was impossible for 40 CIB field agents to control such a large factory. Where would they keep the hostages? Charlotte switched to the X-ray vision ability of his left eye and the scanning ability of his right eye. With the X-ray vision and scanning mode, he quickly determined the place he wanted to go. It was a warehouse. The shutter door of the warehouse was pulled down, so he couldn't see what was inside. But there were two CIB field agents in black suits standing at the door. If there was no problem with the warehouse, this situation would not have happened. Charlotte's vision instantly penetrated the walls of the warehouse. He saw more than 100 yellow-skinned workers. Some of them were sitting on the ground, while others were lying on the cold floor. Some of them were obviously injured, but they did not receive treatment at all. The injured people seemed to be in pain, but the CIB field agents in the warehouse were indifferent and cold. Most of these people who came to Africa from China to work were from poor families. They were honest and worked hard to earn some money. Life was hard enough for them, but they did not expect to experience such a disaster. What was certain was that once the UA confirmed the existence of the rare metal here, their next step would be to eliminate these people and blame the Boca Holy Land militant group. The situation in the warehouse made Charlotte very angry, but he quickly calmed down. He walked to the warehouse, his body exuding a cold aura. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the communicator. "Charlotte, can you hear me?" Charlotte stopped in his tracks. It was Kirsten's voice. "I know it's you. I already expected you to intervene, but I didn't expect you to come so soon." Kirsten's voice. "You're giving me a headache. You blew up the radar station and killed so many people. Tell me, what should I do to you?" Charlotte shifted his gaze in the direction of the office building. His eyes instantly switched to X-ray and scanning mode. He had a panoramic view of the situation in the office building, but other than some CIB agents and 2 people who were suspected to be Special Force commanders, he did not see Kirsten. Kirsten's voice did not stop. "I know you're nearby. Even if you don't say anything, I know it's you. You're smart, but you're not the only smart person in this world. Do you think you'll win?" "No, I'll win." Charlotte took off the communicator, threw it on the ground, and crushed it with his foot. It was not that he did not want to hear Kirsten's provocative voice, but this communicator could very likely make him a target. Chapter 1186. Where would Kirsten be hiding? Charlotte quickly scanned the entire factory. The Friendship Mining factory was not beyond his effective range of vision. Other than some places where he couldn't see through, he completed a second scan of the entire factory in less than a minute. He couldn't find Kirsten in the entire factory. Kirsten might be hiding in a place that couldn't be seen through, but the possibility of that wasn't high. But if he wasn't in the factory, then where would he be hiding? After completing a second scan of the entire factory, Charlotte gave up and continued to walk to the warehouse. He really wanted to kill Kirsten, but there was something more important than killing Kirsten, which was to rescue the hostages and get information about the rare metals from the hostages. Charlotte appeared from behind the side wall of the warehouse, and the 2 CIB agents guarding the door immediately noticed him. "Hey, why are you here?" A CIB agent questioned Charlotte cautiously. Almost all the Special Forces were out on the battlefield, but a Delta Special Forces soldier appeared here. This was enough to arouse the suspicion of the 2 CIB agents. Charlotte didn't say anything and continued to walk forward. "Stop!" The CIB agent who questioned Charlotte reached for his gun. A knife suddenly stabbed into the back of the CIB agent who was about to pull out his gun. He turned around in fear and saw his colleague looking at him expressionlessly. The knife that stabbed into his heart from the back was in his colleague's hand. This was the last scene he would see in his life. The CIB agent who killed his colleague dragged his colleague's body out of the warehouse. After dragging the body out of the door, he turned around and opened the shutter door of the warehouse. "Hey, what are you doing here?" Inside the warehouse, a CIB agent asked. The CIB agent who opened the door didn't answer, but walked straight to the electrical box. He opened the power distribution box and reached out to grab the switchblade. What are you doing?" The CIB agent who asked the question walked over and tried to stop him. Because they were familiar with each other, he didn't pull out his gun. The CIB agent who opened the door suddenly pulled the switch, and the entire warehouse was plunged into darkness. "Bastard, close the switch." Someone cursed in the darkness. Puff, puff, puff. Bullets flew through the warehouse, and each bullet reaped a life. The lives of the CIB field agents were harvested. Their eyes suddenly entered a dark environment, and before they could adapt, they were killed by Charlotte, who rushed in, one by one. A minute later, the lights in the warehouse came back on. All the CIB field agents were lying in pools of blood, none of them able to move. The Chinese employees who were imprisoned in the warehouse looked at the U.S. Special Forces soldier in horror. They thought their doomsday had arrived and that the butcher would kill them as well. But at that moment, they heard the voice of the Special Forces soldier speaking in Chinese. "Don't be afraid. I'm here to save you," Charlotte said. A large group of hostages immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Some collapsed to the ground, while others used their sleeves to wipe the cold sweat off their foreheads. In this short period of time, they felt as if they had slipped through the gates of hell and then returned to the human world. "Can we leave this place now?" someone in the crowd asked. Charlotte said, "Not yet. There are still many U.S. Special Forces and armed personnel from Boca Sacra land outside. If you go out now, they will shoot you on the spot." The group of hostages immediately burst into discussion. Charlotte said, "Be quiet. If you want to live, you have to cooperate with me." The noisy scene suddenly quieted down. Nothing was more important than survival. Charlotte continued, "Who is in charge?" Strangely, no one stepped forward. Charlotte thought for a moment and said, "Who is Shintawaying?" A sweet-looking young woman with a good figure stood up, looking timid. Charlotte was slightly stunned because Shinta Tianyin said that Shintawaying was her seventh uncle. Since it was an uncle, it should be a man. Why did a woman step forward? At that moment, the woman said, "I'm his secretary. CEO Ing is not here." So it was Shintawaying's secretary. Charlotte said, "Where is he?" The woman said, "I think he's in the mine." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "You're all locked up here. Why would he be in a mine?" The woman wanted to say something, but stopped. An old man suddenly stood up and said angrily, "He's a traitor. We discovered rare metals, and the Americans found out about it and came here. We've all been beaten up, but he's fine. He went to the mine to bring the Americans to see the rare metals we found." The Shinta family really did not lack the gene for betrayal. There was Shinto-e before, and now there was Shintawaying. The former betrayed Shinta Tianyin, while the latter betrayed the country. He betrayed the country's interests. "Old sir, what's your name?" Charlotte walked towards him and asked politely. "Wu Qiong." The old man introduced himself. "I'm a geologist. I was the one who discovered the rare metal and sent the sample back to China. Can you talk to me about the rare metal?" Charlotte stopped in front of Wu Qiong. He looked at Wu Qiong, and the look in his eyes changed. Wu Qiong said, "The rare metal was found in mine number 13. It's 500 meters deep in the belly of the mountain. I'm not sure about the reserves of the rare metal, and the geological structure of that place is also very complicated. If I were given a little more time, I would be able to figure out what's going on, but everything happened too fast." Before he could finish speaking, Charlotte had already dug out all the information he needed from his brain. The information formed an image in Charlotte's brain. In that image, he became Wu Qiong. A mining tunnel extended in front of him and finally stopped at the bottom of the tunnel. It was a huge black rock that blocked the mining route. Its surface was not smooth and was full of pits. It looked like a huge meteorite, but that was impossible. Wu Qiong had said that the mining mine number 13 was 500 meters deep. How could a meteorite hit 500 meters underground? That kind of impact was enough to destroy the planet. I thought it was a meteorite at the time, but that's impossible, so I tried to knock a piece off. Wu Qiong was still describing. Charlotte was no longer interested in listening. His eyes moved to Shun Tu-Weiying's secretary. The mysterious energy field enveloped the female secretary and synchronized her thoughts. New information also appeared in his brain. He saw Shun Tu-Weiying's appearance. He was a man about 40 years old. He was fair and clean, wore black-rimmed glasses, and looked very gentle. Charlotte also captured a memory of the female secretary. In an office, she squatted under Shintu Tiannin's desk and was busy, while Shun Tu-Weiying was on the phone with someone. It was this phone call that Shun Tu-Weiying sold the information that Friendship Mining Company had found precious rare metals. His buyer was an American because he mentioned a green card, $50 million, and other conditions of the transaction. After Shun Tu-Weiying ended the call, he pulled the female secretary out from under the desk, pressed her on the desk, and lifted her skirt. As Shun Tu-Weiying moved, he said to the female secretary, "The Americans will send someone over tomorrow. You trick Wu Qiong and the people in the lab into the material warehouse. I'll do the rest." The female secretary moaned, moaning seductively. "Will you take me to the United States?" Shun Tu-Weiying said, "Of course, I'm doing all this for us. I'll let that bitch, Shinta Tianyin, go to hell. I'm working so hard here, but the money I earn is hers. Her assets are already hundreds of billions, and I don't even have 10 million. Then I'll trick Wu Qiong and the people in the lab into the warehouse tomorrow. The female secretary tried her best to please the man behind her. Shuntu Weiying said, I guess Shinda Tianyin will come. That mysterious metal is a strategic resource, a gold mine. If she comes, I'll ask you to make tea for her. You put the medicine I prepared in her tea. I'll listen to you. Charlotte cleared this messy memory, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Mr. Wu, I already know. There's no need to say anything more. Then he said, those who can fight, pick up your weapons. After I leave, close the warehouse door. No one moved. It took a lot of courage to take a gun and fight against CIA agents, the most elite special forces of the United States, and terrorists. Most people didn't have this kind of courage. Charlotte said, do you want to live? Then take a gun and get ready to fight. If you give up, I'll respect your choice. I can tell you with certainty that the Americans will eventually kill all of you and frame the Boca Holy Land militant group for it. You can decide for yourselves what to do. Damn it, I'm going to die anyway. Even if I die, I'll kill at least 2 people. A young man picked up a gun. Then, more people went to pick up the guns. Charlotte said to the female secretary, come with me. Go where? The female secretary looked very nervous. Charlotte said, take me to mine 13. I'm not going. The female secretary refused. Charlotte grabbed her arm and dragged her to the warehouse door. What are you doing? Let me go. You're hurting me. The female secretary was angry and slapped Charlotte's shoulder, but her strength was no different from a mosquito bite to Charlotte. No one intervened and saved the damsel in distress. In such an environment, everyone was in danger. When they walked out of the warehouse, the woman was still arguing. Charlotte's eyes became cold. If you keep arguing, I'll kill you. Don't think I don't know the deal between you and Shun Tu Weiying. You? The female secretary was stunned. She didn't know how Charlotte knew the secret between her and Shun Tu Weiying. Let's go. Charlotte's voice was also very cold. I'm not going. The female secretary said, you don't know anything. Why should I listen to you? Do you have evidence? If you have evidence, go to court and sue me. Go ahead. Do you think I don't dare to kill you? Kill me. Kill me. Do you dare to kill me? You country bumpkin. Charlotte waved his hand, and a cold light swept across the female secretary's neck. Blood spurted from the female secretary's neck. She fell to the ground in horror, clutching her cut neck, and then twitched. Charlotte looked at her expressionlessly and then walked to the office building. There were more than a dozen CIB agents in the office building. Before going to mine 13, he had to clean up the place. Chapter 1187. In the office building, when the last CIB field agent fell in a pool of blood, gunshots and explosions rang out in the forest. Giovanna and the others had already rushed to the battlefield with the veterans from the Rescue Society and joined forces with the Zodiac team to attack Boca Sacred Land and the U.S. Special Forces. Although they were outnumbered, they had better weapons. In addition, each member of the Zodiac team was a super soldier who could take on 10 enemies at once, so the disadvantage in numbers was negligible. Moreover, most of the armed personnel from Boca Sacred Land were a motley crew. They couldn't even beat the veterans from the Rescue Society, let alone the members of the Zodiac team. In fact, after taking care of the Apache helicopter and the Chinook, Charlotte wasn't too worried that the war would develop in the direction he feared. Charlotte left the office building and drove a forklift to the mine. The back door of the factory faced the mining area, and mine 13 was inside. The back door was closed, and there were even cement blocks blocking the way. When the forklift was 50 meters away from the back door, 2 Special Forces soldiers guarding the door rushed out of the guardroom, ready to stop the forklift. Before they could even open their mouths to speak, 2 ghost stones would silently fly over and explode their heads. Charlotte put away the venomous tongue pistol and stepped hard on the accelerator. The forklift lowered the hopper, crashed through the roadblock and back door, and drove toward the mining area. Mine 13 appeared in front of him. It was a very ordinary mine, and there were no special forces or CIB agents guarding the entrance. This situation was somewhat unexpected. Charlotte thought there should be guards, but there weren't. Charlotte stopped the forklift and entered mine 13. He took off the Gale assault rifle on his shoulder. In such an environment, the venomous-tongue pistol wouldn't be able to suppress many enemies. The tunnel was silent, and the lights on the walls were on. Charlotte's footsteps on the tracks were silent. The tunnel twisted and turned, bit by bit, and he couldn't see the end. Charlotte quickly descended to a depth of about 400 meters. The underground air was very humid, and water dripped from above his head from time to time. He was about to reach the bottom, but he still didn't see a single enemy. As he walked, he took out his satellite phone, but there was no signal at all. Rumble. Suddenly, there was an explosion. The shockwave from the explosion rushed up from the bottom of the tunnel, causing the entire tunnel to tremble as if it would collapse at any moment. A rock fell from above his head. Xiaolei dodged to the side and stopped in his tracks. The shockwave from the explosion quickly dissipated, and the tunnel returned to silence. Other than the dripping sound of water, there was no other sound. After a pause, he continued to walk forward. After about 50 meters, he crossed a bend, and the bottom of the tunnel entered his line of sight. According to the memories dug out from Wu Qiong's brain, there was a large black rock at the bottom of the tunnel. It looked like a meteorite. Now, it had fallen off, revealing a circular hole. The explosion just now was obviously aimed at it, so it could be seen that the person it threw down from the rock wall was not at the bottom of the tunnel. The hole in the rock wall was deep and dark, and he couldn't see what was inside. Charlotte tried to scan the inside of the circular hole with his X-ray vision, but strangely, his X-ray vision failed. When he looked inside, it was like he was swallowed by darkness, and nothing was left. What is this place? Xiaolei's heart was filled with shock. The rare metal sample that Wu Qiong had knocked down was obviously from the spherical black rock, but after it was blown off the rock wall, there was no similar ore. It looked like a spherical barrier that was used to block the passageway. If it wasn't a rare metal mine, but just an obstacle, would the Americans pay such a high price to occupy Friendship Mining? The safest thing to do was to turn around and leave immediately, taking the members of the Zodiac Squad, Giovanna, and the veterans of the rescue club with him. But after hesitating for a moment, Charlotte still walked to the bottom of the tunnel. When he reached the bottom of the tunnel, Charlotte stopped and reached out to touch the circular black rock. A very strange feeling came over him. For some reason, the 6 statues of the faceless warriors suddenly appeared in his mind. He was shocked and secretly thought, is this the material used to make the faceless warrior statues? He couldn't confirm this guess. Charlotte went into the circular tunnel in the rock wall. The inside of the circular tunnel was relatively smooth, and the traces of artificial polishing were also very obvious. It wasn't a natural karst tunnel. A new question was born in Charlotte's mind. Who would dig a tunnel 500 meters underground? He still couldn't find the answer. It was dark in the cylindrical tunnel, and there was no light at all. After a certain distance, the light at the entrance couldn't shine in, and even with Charlotte's eyesight, he had trouble seeing things. He also noticed that there was a very strange energy field in this place. The ability of his left and right eyes was affected by the energy field, and at least half of them were weakened. With no other choice, Charlotte twisted a light stick and continued to walk down with it in his hand. This was very risky, but he had no other choice. After a certain distance, he reached the end of the cylindrical tunnel. In front of him was a huge underground space. It was triangular in shape and looked very similar to the pyramid in the belly of the mountain he found in Jerusalem, just that it didn't have those terrifying human skulls and crystal skulls. The other difference was that the floor of the pyramid here wasn't rock, but water. The still water was like a mirror. Charlotte's position was halfway up, about 50 meters above the water surface. At this height, coupled with the interference of the energy field, he couldn't see the situation in the water at all. Charlotte shifted his gaze to the center of the square water surface. He seemed to see something that looked like an altar, but he still couldn't see it clearly. He raised his hand and threw the light stick down. The light stick spun a few times in the air before landing in the center of the square water surface. It sank into the water, but it only sank for a short distance before stopping. It was a hexagonal stone platform that was submerged in the water. At that moment, a woman lying in the middle of the stone platform appeared in the water. Her skin was as white as jade, her hair as black as ink. Her beauty was indescribable. However, Charlotte was afraid because of her, because the woman lying on the underwater stone platform was none other than Zhu Xianyue, Isotab from another corn, the goddess of suicide. Rumble, a deafening sound, suddenly came from under the water, and the still water surface also trembled, and then waves rolled. In the roar, the submerged stone platform slowly emerged bit by bit, bit by bit. Zhu Xianyue, who was lying on the stone platform, also emerged bit by bit. The first to emerge from the water surface were her twin peaks, then her face and lower abdomen, and then her pair of jade legs. She wasn't wearing any clothes, and everything was clearly visible under the light of the light stick, making it impossible to pick out any flaws. If one had to pick out a bone from an egg, it was probably because she had inherited the characteristics of Gu Qian, that the vegetation in that place was too dense. The stone platform emerged from the water surface, but the shaking did not stop. The stone bricks at the 6 corners of the hexagonal stone platform opened, and 6 metal columns emerged from below, bit by bit. The 6 metal columns stopped and suddenly opened. 6 bright beams of light suddenly pierced through the darkness, reaching the top of the pyramid. Only then did Charlotte realize that the stone bricks used to build the pyramid were all black minerals. If this was a rare metal mine, then this was really a rare metal mine with a considerable amount of reserves. Could it be that the Americans and Zhu Xianyue had made a deal? If that's the case, then it's going to be troublesome, Charlotte thought to himself. If it was Zhu Xianyue who had made a deal with the Americans, then this deal could not be broken. Not only could he not break it, but he had to leave immediately. There was a high chance that he would have to face Zhu Xianyue's wrath. After confirming that the woman lying on the stone platform was Zhu Xianyue, Charlotte stepped back. He was very curious about what Zhu Xianyue was doing here, but between curiosity and his life, he chose the latter without hesitation. There was still more than a year left before the black-robed man's only deadline. It was not that he had to die. Although the chances were slim, he still had a chance to turn the situation around. However, the prerequisite for that was that he had to stay alive. However, just as Charlotte stepped back and was about to leave, a man's voice broke the silence in the underground pyramid. "Since you're already here, are you going to leave without making things clear?" It was Kirsten's voice. "I've always thought that you're a very courageous man, but you know what? What you did just now disappointed me." Charlotte stopped and returned to the edge of the tunnel's exit. He leaned his upper body out and looked down. He saw Kirsten standing on the edge of the pool with his 2 inseparable followers, Charlotte and Eva. Kirsten looked up at Charlotte, who was standing above. His face had a confident and good-looking smile. "Charlotte, don't you think it's strange? Don't you want to figure it out?" "You know?" Charlotte asked tentatively. Kirsten nodded. "What's wrong with her?" "She's fine," Kirsten said. "What does she want?" Kirsten smiled. "Why don't you ask her yourself later? I think you and her must have a lot to talk about, especially about you piloting a B-2 bomber to blow up the AE Research Center. Don't you think you owe her an explanation?" Charlotte's gaze moved to the hexagonal stone platform. Zhu Xianyue still had her eyes closed and had not woken up. Under the illumination of the 6 snow-white pillars of light, her body was completely exposed, not a single hair hidden. At this time, his gaze suddenly moved to the metal container that had fallen on the stone platform. He was stunned for a moment. Was it that the alloy container that Zhu Xianyue used to store the energy liquid after she dissolved the 6 faceless warrior statues in the AE Research Center? The B-2 bomber had bombed the AE Research Center indiscriminately. The place had been destroyed over and over again, but the important people and things were not destroyed. It was meaningless to think about what had happened at that time. "Charlotte, do you know?" There was a hint of mockery in Kirsten's tone. "It wasn't easy to lure you here. I prepared a large number of Delta Special Forces Navy SEALs, and armed men from Boca's sacred land for you and your men to kill. I didn't kill the Hua workers because I wanted them to tell you where they found the rare metal. In order to see you, I purposely removed the guard from the mine. Tell me, why do you think I'm so good to you? It was all a trap from the beginning. Charlotte suddenly grabbed the gun, lowered the muzzle, and pulled the trigger at Kirsten. Chapter 1188. Shio shio, shio shio. The silenced gunshots were almost inaudible, and the 4 bullets flew toward Kirsten in a triangular formation. One of the bullets blocked off Kirsten's path to the pool. The other 2 blocked off Kirsten's paths to the left and right, and the last one headed straight for his head. The only place Kirsten could dodge was the black rock wall behind him, but he obviously could not use magic to burrow into the rock. This was Charlotte's marksmanship, taking Kirsten's life in the blink of an eye. However, Kirsten did not make any moves to dodge. The 4 bullets did not fly to his side, nor did they hit his head. Instead, they flew toward the hexagonal stone platform in the middle of the pool the moment they left the muzzle. The 6 snow-white pillars of light trembled, and the void in the middle of the stone platform seemed to be torn open. The 4 bullets flew toward it like moths to a flame and then disappeared. Charlotte was stunned on the spot. The prehistoric one had said that Zhu Xianyue wanted to use the energy extracted from the 6 faceless warrior statues to open some kind of passage and summon her kind to this world. She was an undefeatable predator, and if more of her kind came, this world would be doomed. Now, Zhu Xianyue seemed to be carrying out some kind of strange plan. If it was really like what the prehistoric one had said, what should he do? Charlotte really wanted to stop Zhu Xianyue, but the cruel reality was right in front of him. He was not a match for Zhu Xianyue at all. This made him feel very pained. If Zhu Xianyue started the end of this world, he could only watch from the side, unable to do anything. Shooting at the slightest disagreement? Charlotte, do you really want to kill me that badly? Kirsten said, a mocking smile on his face. Charlotte put down the Gale assault rifle in his hand. The gun was useless here. Kirsten sneered. If you really want to kill me, then come down. Only by coming down will you have a chance to kill me. Charlotte turned around and left. Since he couldn't stop Zhu Xianyue, there was nothing he could do. If he stayed, his life would be in danger. If he didn't leave now, then when? Do you think you can leave? Kirsten took out a remote control from his pocket and pressed it lightly. Rumble. Suddenly, there was a violent explosion coming from the tunnel behind him. The scorching blast wave of the explosion was like an avalanche. Charlotte had nowhere to escape. In a moment of desperation, he dashed forward and jumped down. As soon as his body left the exit of the tunnel, a cylindrical flame flew over his head. At that moment, he felt as if his entire body was about to be roasted, and the pain was unbearable. Although he had avoided the deadly blast wave, more than half of his hair had been burnt. Voila! Charlotte dived into the pool. From a height of 50 meters, his body smashed into the pool like a cannonball. If the water wasn't deep enough, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Fortunately, that didn't happen. After his body entered the water, he fell rapidly and only slowed down after falling for 10 meters. At this time, the pool hadn't reached the bottom yet. The water in the pool was bone-chilling. It was a cold that could instantly penetrate one's muscles and bones. It gave one the feeling that one had jumped into a pool of liquid ammonia. Charlotte's body quickly went numb. His organs and brain also went on strike due to the slowing down of blood flow. His consciousness started to blur, and all of this happened in a few seconds. If it was a normal person, even if they didn't die from falling from a height of 50 meters, they would die in this cold pool because the water was at least minus 20 degrees Celsius. It was minus 20 degrees Celsius, but it didn't freeze. This water was not an underground spring. With the dozens of kilograms of equipment on him, Charlotte continued to fall. He didn't know how deep the pool was. He wanted to float up, but his limbs were numb. He couldn't control his body to swim. His brain was getting dizzier and dizzier. Am I going to die? If I die a few hundred meters underground, Frosty and the others will never find me. At this critical moment, he wasn't thinking about cracking the secret of the box of the world, nor was he thinking about stopping Zhu Xianyue from bringing disaster to the world. He was thinking about the woman he loved the most and his children. He was afraid. Other than the fear of death, he was also afraid of losing his family and children. His body continued to sink. The pool seemed bottomless. A minute later, his consciousness completely fell into darkness. He couldn't think or feel fear. Ha ha ha. Beside the pool, Kirsten laughed out loud. The CIB and the Pentagon spent so much effort, so much manpower, and so much time, but they still couldn't kill Xiaolei. But I did it. It's not complicated, don't you think? A cold smile appeared on Eva's lips. Those guys at the Pentagon said he's the smartest person in the world, but I don't think so at all. You're the smartest person in the world. Unfortunately, the guy didn't know your real identity until he died. Kirsten shrugged in a cool manner. I've long forgotten about that identity. I'm enjoying my current life. Charlotte stared at the calm surface of the water. Should we fish his body out? I really want to kick him in the face or spit on him, but it's impossible, Kirsten said. The water here is 500 meters deep. Unless we can get a submarine in, we won't be able to fish his body out. That's a pity. That guy got off too easy, Charlotte said. Eva walked to the edge of the pool and looked into the water. She wanted to see Charlotte's body sink. Hey, be careful. Kirsten reached out to grab her and pulled her back. Is the water poisonous? Eva asked curiously. Kirsten didn't explain. He took out a pistol from his belt and buried part of it in the water. A second later, the part of the gun that was buried in the water was frozen. See, if you fall in, no one will jump in to save you, Kirsten said. Besides, even if we can fish you out in time, you'll become a cripple or even die. Eva's face was filled with shock. Charlotte said, It seems like that guy is really dead. If she wakes up, how are you going to explain it to her? There's no need for an explanation. She wanted Charlotte dead. I just did what she wanted to do, but was hesitant to do, Kirsten said. In the middle of the pool, on the hexagonal stone platform, Zhu Xuanyue's eyes were still closed. There was no sign of her waking up. The 6 white beams shot straight toward the top of the pyramid. The 6 beams were refracted and converged into one beam at the top of the pyramid. But the strange thing was that it seemed to have penetrated the pyramid, penetrated space-time and the starry sky, and shot towards an unknown and mysterious place. Zhu Xianyue, Isotap from another corn, the goddess of suicide. Was she using this method to contact her kind from another corn? No one knew the answer. Under the water, Charlotte's body suddenly trembled. Then he opened his eyes. His eyes were pitch black. The darkness was so thick that it would not disperse. There was no white in his eyes at all. In the forest next to the Friendship Mining Company, he once had an idea. After everything was over, he would find a sea or a lake and try to see how long he could hold his breath underwater. He wanted to know if he could survive without oxygen. However, before he could settle everything here, he got the chance, and it was in this strange water. He didn't need to breathe, because the mysterious energy in his body had replaced oxygen. He was still alive because the life energy hidden in his body had woken up in time. This was not an accidental situation. When he was still weak, every time he encountered the threat of death, the mysterious energy hidden in his body would awaken and play all kinds of roles to help him get through the difficult times. Now it was still the same situation. I'm still alive, I'm still alive, Charlotte said to himself. Faces appeared in his mind. Long Bing, Liang Xiao, Fan Fan, Jiang Rui, Tang Yuyin, Shina Tianin, Xia Long, Xia Jianghe, Xia Fan, Liang Jiayu, his sister Xia Shui, and his father Xia Changhe. These were the people he loved the most, and they seemed to have given him strength. He shook his head and tried to move his limbs. His limbs returned to normal. They were no longer numb. This discovery reignited his desire to live. He swam upstream. He didn't take off the equipment bag on his back. With his strength, the weight of the equipment bag was nothing. Soon, light appeared above his head. He saw the hexagonal platform that Zhu Xianyue was lying on. He also saw Kirsten and his 2 female companions standing by the pool. Charlotte was standing beside Kirsten, and Eva was standing by the pool. Charlotte changed his route. He slowly swam to the edge of the pool, and when he was close to the edge, he slowly floated upward. He floated very slowly, very carefully, and silently. There was not a single ripple on the surface of the water. Kirsten, Charlotte, and Eva were still talking by the pool. The atmosphere of the conversation was very relaxed. Charlotte is dead. Are we still going to continue with the Dragon Slayer project? Charlotte's voice was heard. Of course we are going to continue with the Dragon Slayer project. Killing Charlotte is only a part of the plan. That ancient and backward country wants to replace the Western world? Humph, they don't even have faith. If China becomes the most powerful country in the world, it will be the world's tragedy. Even God won't be happy, Kirsten said. Then he drew a cross on his chest, looking very pious. Then we really should let their technology return to 50 years ago, Eva said with a smile. This world needs to change, and China is the place that needs to be changed the most. In fact, it shouldn't even exist, Kirsten said. When Lockheed Martin's super fighter jet, the Dragon Slayer, is born, China will tuck its tail between its legs. A mocking smile appeared on Eva's lips. But that's useless. The United States won't be merciful anymore. Those people in the Pentagon are already mad at China. Those warmongers will do anything. Just as she finished speaking, a hand suddenly emerged from the water and grabbed her ankle. Chapter 1189. There was no sound, no warning. The hand suddenly appeared. It felt like something out of a horror movie, where a shriveled hand suddenly appeared from a graveyard and grabbed her ankle. Unlike the movie, the hand that grabbed Eva's ankle was not shriveled, but a pair of strong and powerful hands. Ah! Eva screamed and instinctively tried to break free from the hand. However, before she could make any movement to struggle, the hand suddenly pulled her out of the water. Eva's body fell into the pool uncontrollably. No! Kirsten pounced. Splash! Eva fell into the water. However, the hand that grabbed her ankle did not let go of her. Instead, it dragged her feet into the water. She finally saw who had dragged her into the water. It was Charlotte. What she could not see was a terrifying face. His eyes were as black as ink, without any white in them. There was no expression on his face, and he looked down on everything about her. Eva struggled with all her might, but she could not break free from the hand. The bone-chilling water quickly took away the heat from her body. Her limbs became numb in the blink of an eye, and she could not move. She opened her mouth to breathe, but all that entered her mouth was cold water. There was no air at all. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Eva fell silent. She opened her mouth, but she did not take another sip of water. He did not die. That was Eva's last thought. Bastard. Beside the pool, Kirsten roared like a madman. I will kill you. Kirsten aimed his gun at the pool and pulled the trigger, but his gun exploded. He had forgotten that his gun was frozen in the pool, and the bullet could not be fired. Damn it. Ah. Kirsten threw the gun into the pool. Bang. Bang. Charlotte fired. Her gun was not frozen. However, the bullet flew toward the stone platform the moment it left the muzzle and disappeared. She had also forgotten that guns were useless here. Come out. Get out. Kirsten roared angrily. Splash. A head suddenly popped up from the pool. It was Charlotte's head. His face was expressionless, cold, and frightening. Charlotte popped out of the water at the edge of the pool, about 10 meters away from Kirsten and Charlot. As soon as he came out of the water, his upper body jumped out of the water. He grabbed the edge of the pool with both hands and pushed himself up. His whole body jumped out of the water and landed on the edge of the pool. With this leap, the clothes on his body turned into pieces of ice and fell to the ground. His equipment bag and the Gale assault rifle on his back also fell to the ground. Almost in a second, he inexplicably turned into a naked primitive man. His body could withstand the extreme cold, but his clothes could not. Under the effect of the external force, his clothes were frozen into ice and shattered on the ground. With a body that could be said to have perfect curves, strong and well-proportioned muscles, and fair and tender skin, Charlotte, who had returned to the ground, had a kind of beauty that could move the hearts of men and women alike. If only he could cover his eye-catching things, it would be perfect. Even though his clothes were shredded and his gun dropped, Charlotte was only holding onto a military knife. The military knife was very sharp and flashed with a cold light. In the energy field of this underground pyramid, the greater the kinetic energy of the object, the greater the effect. Using a knife, there would be no problem. Bastard! Zelita pounced at Charlotte with a military knife in her hand. In the blink of an eye, the two military knives collided with each other, creating a few sparks. Ding, ding, ding. After the first collision, Charlotte and Charlot exchanged 3 more blows. Kirsten silently appeared beside Charlotte with a Delta Special Forces military knife in his hand, ready to ambush Charlotte. Ding, ding, ding. Chi! The sound of the doctor's knife tearing flesh could be heard, and Charlot hurriedly retreated. Her towering breasts were cut open, her clothes were torn, and so was her bra. Even the white, jade-like fullness inside was cut open. If she was just a little bit more careful, she might have gotten a free breast cancer removal surgery. Kirsten finally got his chance. He suddenly stabbed at Xia Lei's ribs. Xia Lei didn't even look at it as he waved his hand and slashed at it. Ding! Amidst the sparks, the two military knives collided. Charlotte's general knife pushed at Kirsten's chest, and Kirsten's general knife pushed at Charlotte's chest. The forces from different directions collided, and the tip of the knife moved toward Charlotte and then toward Kirsten. The blades rubbed against each other, creating an ear-piercing sound. Xia Lei's heart was filled with shock. He had never thought that Kirsten's strength would be so great that it could actually contend against his strength. This was his first time fighting with Kirsten, and before this, Kirsten gave him the impression of a smart and cunning enemy. He did not expect this guy to be a master of both the pen and the sword. Charlot did not have the time to check the wound on her breasts. She took a step forward, and the military knife in her hand drew a bright trail in the air. Like a shooting star in the night sky, she went straight for Charlotte's back. He was attacked from both front and back. At this critical moment, Charlotte's brain suddenly switched to super brain mode. Kirsten's movements, Charlot's movements, Kirsten's possible movements, Charlot's possible movements, everything that could happen, and everything that could happen appeared in his brain and was simulated. He pushed Kirsten away and was stabbed in the back by Charlot's knife. He retreated to block Charlot's sneak attack and was cut in the neck by Kirsten. He lay down and was stabbed to death by the two of them. He moved sideways and was unable to avoid the two's joint attack, so he would still die. One by one, the simulation results appeared in Xia Lei's mind. His brain also rejected the simulation deductions, one by one, until the correct result appeared. Charlotte suddenly let go, and his body fell backward. His body was still in the air when he suddenly exerted force with his right leg and kicked at the vital spot between Kirsten's legs, who was pouncing toward him due to inertia. At the same time, he stabbed the military knife in his hand backward. Kirsten had no choice but to raise his knee and use it to block Charlotte's attack. Charlot's sneak attack missed, and he felt a pain in his leg. Xia Lei had stabbed him in the thigh. This was the result of Charlotte's simulation in super brain mode. It seemed like a very complicated process, but it had happened in less than a second. In that almost negligible amount of time, his brain's calculation speed was comparable to that of a large computer. Based on the images that his eyes saw and the sounds that his ears heard, he analyzed and calculated in all aspects. Then, his body moved according to the superbrain's instructions. In the end, not only had he neutralized Kirsten and Charlot's joint attack, he had also heavily injured Charlot. Charlotte had used the super brain mode to study unmanned aerial vehicles and fighter jets countless times, but this was the first time he had used it in a battle. Charlot cried out in pain and staggered backward. Charlotte's back landed on the ground. He supported himself with his hands and twisted his legs in the air. His entire body spun like a tornado rising from the ground. Kirsten had already rushed over. He would not give up on the chance that Charlotte had just gotten up. Charlotte twisted his waist, and his legs that were still in the air opened up like a pair of scissors. Using the kinetic energy of the rotation, His right leg suddenly moved horizontally, and with great force, it swept across Kirsten's right arm that was holding the military knife that was stabbing toward his chest. Bang! With a dull sound, Kirsten's body was sent flying, and the military knife in his hand fell to the ground. After his body flew a few meters away, he crashed into the wall of the Black Pyramid and fell to the ground. During this process, Charlotte had already rushed forward and attacked with the military knife in his hand. He stabbed at Charlot like a storm. Ding 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 shick. Charlot blocked a few of the attacks, but because of the injuries on her chest and legs, when Charlotte delivered the fifth stab, she was half a beat too slow, and Charlotte stabbed her in the stomach. Cough! Charlot coughed up a mouthful of blood. Xiaolei did not have any expression on his face, nor did he have the slightest bit of soft-heartedness or pity. He pulled out the military knife that was stabbed into Charlotte's stomach, then stabbed into her lower abdomen, pulled it out again, and stabbed again and again. Charlotte no longer had any strength to resist. None of Charlotte's stabs had hit her vitals, but her life was slipping away quickly. Charlotte stretched out his hand and pushed gently, and Charlotte fell to the ground with her face up. Blood flowed out from her wounds, drenching her clothes and the ground in the blink of an eye. No! Kirsten, who had just crawled up from the ground, roared at Charlotte. Charlotte walked toward him and said calmly, "No, what? You don't want her to die? Why didn't you tell me earlier? If you had told me earlier, I would have definitely fulfilled your wish." Kirsten retreated. He no longer had the military knife in his hand, and his gun could not be used normally in the pyramid's energy field. He and Charlot had not been able to kill Charlotte even after joining hands. Now that Charlot was dead, he was left to face Charlotte alone. He had actually lost the courage to fight. Charlotte continued to approach Kirsten. "Who exactly are you? I don't believe that you're the CEO of Lockheed Martin Corporation." "The CEO of Lockheed Martin Corporation? My family owns shares in the 5 largest arms companies in the United States. I could be the CEO of any company if I want to." Kirsten continued to retreat. There is actually such a family in the world. If there was, then it was even more mysterious and powerful than the Skull and Bone Society of Yale University. "What family? Let's have a fair duel, the kind of duel between gentlemen. If you beat me, I will tell you everything you want to know. Not only my family, but also the things you want to know," Kirsten said. Charlotte stopped in his tracks. "What do you know?" Kirsten shrugged. "My conditions are very clear. A duel between gentlemen. If you win, I will tell you." Charlotte smiled. "You want me to put down the military knife in my hand and fight you?" Kirsten nodded his head. "Yes," Charlotte said calmly, "but I think it will be more satisfying to stab you with a knife. Also, I want to see how much pain you can endure to keep your secret." Kirsten had been calm and relaxed at first, but at this moment, he could no longer relax. Charlotte suddenly pounced at Kirsten. He gathered his strength and suddenly charged forward. He was like a cheetah hiding in the grass, pouncing on its prey that did not notice it. His speed was even faster and more ferocious than a real cheetah. Kirsten wanted to dodge, but he was facing Charlotte. He did not dare to turn around and expose his back to Charlotte's military knife. However, if he retreated, his speed could not compare to Charlotte, who was pouncing at him like a cheetah. In the blink of an eye, the two were entangled. The military knife in Charlotte's hand swung out, slicing and stabbing, each move faster than the one before. Kirsten struggled to hold on. His body swayed left and right, and he did not dare to clash with Charlotte's military knife. Hiss! A cold glint slashed across Kirsten's shoulder, and a trace of blood splattered from the edge of the knife. Chi! The sharp military knife slashed across Kirsten's lower abdomen. Kirsten's expensive suit was torn open, and blood flowed out. If he had not hurriedly sucked in his abdomen, his intestines would have flowed out from his wound. Chapter 1190. Slash after slash. Each slash was faster than the last. With the superbrain, Kirsten's every move could not escape Charlotte's prediction. His slash would always land at the correct spot, and add a new wound to Kirsten's body. There was no place on Kirsten's body that was not red. More than 10 wounds of various sizes were bleeding, and his expensive suit had long since been dyed red. As the number of wounds increased and blood flowed out, his reaction and speed became slower and slower. Another slash stabbed into Kirsten's thigh. Kirsten fell to the ground. Charlotte used his knee to press down on his chest and pulled out the military knife from his thigh. He then pressed it against his right chest and stabbed it into his body bit by bit. Blood flowed out from Kirsten's chest. If Charlotte stabbed a little more, his lung would be pierced. Breathing and bleeding might not be enough to kill him immediately, but he could make him struggle in pain while waiting for death to come. However, in the face of death, there was no fear in Kirsten's eyes. He actually looked very calm. "You can't kill me." Xia Lei's saber stabbed down a little. "Really?" Kirsten laughed maniacally. "If you kill me, you will ruin her plan. Do you think she will let you go? Think about your woman and child." Charlotte's gaze was very cold. "Are you threatening me?" Kirsten said, "This is not a threat. This is a reminder. There is a reason why she doesn't kill you. There is also a reason why you can't kill me." Charlotte did not ask. His eyes suddenly changed. His black eyes were breathtaking. The mysterious energy field instantly enveloped Kirsten and synchronized his thoughts. Stealing memories from the target's brain and digging out the information he wanted was something Charlotte had never failed since he had obtained this ability. However, he failed this time. He could not synchronize Constantine's thoughts, nor could he control his thoughts or steal any information from his brain. The mysterious energy field seemed to have invaded a corpse's brain. There was nothing there. "You?" Charlotte's eyes returned to normal, but his heart was filled with shock. "Who are you?" "You won't know the answer," Kirsten said. "I suggested a fair duel, but you didn't agree." Charlotte said coldly, "Now, I will set the rules of the game. If you answer my question, my hand will not move. If you don't, I will pierce your lungs. If you lie to me, I will still puncture your lungs." Sometimes you are very naive. Kirsten was not afraid at all. "Also, don't forget my warning. You'd better not kill me or you'll regret it." Charlotte's hand that was holding the military knife moved down bit by bit. The sharp knife cut through Quentin's muscles and moved closer to his lungs. Kirsten endured the pain and did not cry out. There was no fear in his eyes, only anger and contempt. Charlotte's hand stopped just as the knife was about to pierce through Quentin's lungs. However, this was not because Quentin's threat had taken effect. It was because he was thinking about a question in his mind. Why can't I steal information from his brain? Who is he? He was suddenly reminded of something. That's right. Zhu Xinyue once told me that she couldn't control my brain. Could this Kirsten be the same kind of person as me? But how is that possible? Since Kirsten was like him, he could not control his brain and steal information from it. That was the most logical explanation. But the problem was, how could there be a person in this world who had taken the AE capsule and achieved super evolution? Cough, cough. Kirsten coughed, and a trickle of blood leaked out from the corner of his lips. However, a condescending smile appeared on his lips. "What, are you afraid? You don't dare to kill me?" Just as Kirsten finished speaking, the military knife in Charlotte's hand suddenly pierced into his lungs. The sharp blade had completely sunk into his chest, leaving only the handle outside. Kirsten was stunned, and fear appeared in his eyes. "I'm really curious about your identity. You might have a family behind you, but it'll solve my problem better than killing you." After saying that, Charlotte pulled out the military knife and stabbed it into Kirsten's heart. He was right. Giving Kirsten time to kill an enemy who had the same super evolution as him was equivalent to creating trouble for himself. He did not have much time left, and before he left this world, he would not leave an enemy like Kirsten for his wife and children. "I don't dare to kill you. I'm going to kill you." "No." Kirsten broke down. Fear crashed into his body and soul like an avalanche. He could no longer maintain his calm and control attitude. Whoosh! A beam of light suddenly flew and hit Charlotte's right wrist hard. The huge impact and the intense pain caused the military knife in Xia Lei's hand to fall to the ground. While Charlotte lost his grip, Kirsten suddenly raised his hands and pushed Charlotte's chest, pushing Charlotte off his body. Charlotte did not go after Kirsten. In his eyes, Kirsten was no longer a threat. However, he had a new goal, and it was a threat that he did not want to face the most. Zhu Xianyue. Charlotte shifted his gaze to the center of the pool, and he saw Zhu Xianyue standing on the stone platform. The thing she used to knock his military knife down was the glow stick that he had thrown on the stone platform. It was still glowing quietly. Their eyes met. There were no words, only a straight line of sight. Zhu Xianyue, who was standing on the stone platform, was snow-white like jade. She looked beautiful. Charlotte, who was standing beside the pool, also had fair skin and well-proportioned muscles. He was extraordinarily charming and could be said to be perfect. A few seconds later, Zhu Xianyue suddenly bent her legs on the stone platform. With a kick, her body flew up and charged at Charlotte like a cannonball. Her long hair fluttered behind her. Although her breasts were trembling, they remained firm and did not move back because of the terrifying speed and impact. Charlotte saw that Zhu Xianyue was already in front of him. Zhu Xuanyue's snow-white legs parted at that moment, and one of them stabbed toward his chest like a spear. Charlotte crossed his arms in front of his chest and used the hardest part of his elbows to block Zhu Xuanyue's attack. Boom! With a dull thud, Charlotte's body left the ground and crashed into the pyramid's stone wall like a meteorite. Puffed! Charlotte spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body fell heavily to the ground. His body had entered a comprehensive evolution, and his strength was far greater than before. But facing Zhu Xianyue, he was still not her match. Zhu Xianyue looked at Charlotte coldly. There was not a trace of human emotion in her eyes. They were cold and emotionless. Charlotte could not help but feel a trace of sorrow. He had done his best and paid the greatest price he could. But facing an opponent like Zhu Xianyue, he still could not do anything. He could not defeat her. Zhu Xianyue walked toward Charlotte. Her jade-like feet left faint traces of water on the cold stone floor. With each step, the pressure increased. Charlotte struggled to get up from the ground. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Do you want to kill me? Have you forgotten what happened in the past?" He wanted to awaken the tranquility and gu qun in Zhu Xuanyue's body. There was a slight fluctuation in Zhu Xuanyue's eyes, but it only flickered for a moment before disappearing. It was replaced by coldness and emotionlessness. There was also an obvious trace of killing intent. Compared to the previous Zhu Xianyue, she was much more stable now. Charlotte's heart quickly sank. He knew what Zhu Xuanyue's gaze meant. He took a deep breath. "If you really want to kill me, I won't blame you. But seeing that I've helped you so much, can you tell me the truth?" Zhu Xianyue flashed, and her snow-white body instantly appeared in front of Charlotte. The two plump and firm breasts in front of her chest had already touched Xia Lei's chest. When peas and cherries touched, it brought about a sense of disharmony and an element of instability. Zhu Xianyue clearly didn't do it on purpose. It was just an accident outside of the plan. But it was this accident that made her eyes shine with a strange light. It seemed to be gentleness, but it also seemed to be pain. Tranquility? Qun? Charlotte saw a glimmer of hope. Zhu Xianyue suddenly grabbed Charlotte's neck. Charlotte didn't predict her movements at all. Moreover, her speed was too fast. It was so fast that he didn't have any reaction time to dodge. "Don't waste your energy to awaken the two women in my body." Zhu Xuanyue's voice was as cold as a knife. "I didn't kill you, but you teamed up with the prehistoric one to deal with me. Do you really think I won't kill you just because you helped me?" "You will, I believe," Charlotte said. "I'm just making a last request. Tell me the truth. You owe me. I've already paid you back what I owe you." Zhu Xianyue looked very fierce. "No, you didn't," Charlotte said. Zhu Xianyue suddenly pressed forward and used her body to push Charlotte against the stone wall. Her soft and plump breasts were completely pressed against Charlotte's chest, abdomen, thighs, and it looked like a posture of leaning against the wall. It was sexy and seductive. However, Charlotte knew that he was suffering, because Zhu Xuanyue's body was like a battering ram that was pushing him against the stone wall. Although her body was smooth and delicate, her strength was enough to crush all the bones in his body. Zhu Xianyue was best at killing people by eating them or controlling the target to kill herself in various ways. However, Charlotte was someone she couldn't control or eat. This seemed to be the reason why she chose to kill Charlotte in this way. Xiaolei's body couldn't move at all. His bones were crackling as if they would break at any moment. Kirsten looked at Zhu Xianyue and Charlotte, who were squeezed together, and a happy smile appeared on his face. However, at this moment, Zhu Xianyue suddenly let go of Charlotte, and a strange smile appeared on her face. "You ate it?" Charlotte was stunned, but he knew that Zhu Xianyue was talking about was the last AE capsule. Zhu Xianyue took a step back and observed Charlotte carefully. Then she smiled again. "No wonder you could survive in the water." She seemed to have confirmed this sentence, and there was no need for Charlotte to give her an answer. "What does it have to do with you that I ate it?" Charlotte asked tentatively after calming down a little. "You will know, but not now," Zhu Xianyue said. "Go, I won't kill you." "Why?" "Go, before I change my mind." Zhu Xianyue's eyes turned cold. Charlotte did not ask anything else and turned to leave. When he left, he picked up the Gale assault rifle and the equipment bag that had been defrosted on the ground. Kirsten looked at Xiaolei with a complicated look in his eyes. Chapter 1191. The violent explosion had taken place in the tunnel. The rock structure of this place was extremely strong, so it did not collapse. Kirsten had planned all of this to kill Charlotte, but he could not blow up the tunnel and bury himself hundreds of meters underground. The tunnel was full of rock fragments produced by the high temperature. Charlotte walked barefoot on it. The rock fragments pricked his feet, but he did not seem to feel any pain. Who was Kirsten? What was Zhu Xianyue doing? Why did Zhu Xianyue let him go after he took the last AE capsule? These three questions troubled him and made him restless. If Zhu Xianyue was really summoning her kind on the other corn, and if she succeeded, it would undoubtedly be the beginning of a huge disaster for the world. But even if that was the case, he could not stop her. The current situation was that even if he had another B-2 bomber and loaded it with nuclear bombs, he would not be able to blow up the pyramid hundreds of meters underground, let alone kill Kirsten and Zhu Xianyue. In the face of such a situation, how could he still feel excited about escaping from death? Walking out of Mine 13, Charlotte jumped on the forklift and drove it to Friendship Mining. After entering the back door, he stopped the forklift, pulled out the clothes of a Special Forces soldier, and put them on himself. Then, he walked to the warehouse. Along the way, he wanted to contact the members of the Zodiac Squad and Giovanna, but the satellite phone only rang when he needed it. It had already sunk into the strange cold pool along with his clothes. Without the satellite phone, he could not contact the members of the Zodiac Squad and Giovanna, so he had no way of knowing the situation of the battle. But the one he was most worried about was Shinta Tianyin. She was someone who had even wiped her gun. How could she survive in a combat organization with such a huge disparity in numbers? Just as he began to worry about Shinta Tianyin, a voice came from the communicator found on the body. "The people on the mountain are retreating to the railway. Surround them and kill them." Someone responded on the communicator. It was Chaos. Charlotte relaxed a little when he heard this conversation. The enemies on the mountain were obviously referring to the members of the Zodiac Squad. They were retreating towards the railway, obviously intending to meet up with Giovanna and the others. The development of the battle might be somewhat disadvantageous, but it was not to the extent of being terrible. Charlotte ran toward the warehouse and appeared in front of the Chinese employees again. He went straight to the point and said, "Boca's Sacred Lands Armed Forces and Marika's Special Forces are heading toward the railway. There should be no enemy guards on the road. You guys should run away now. Take all the cars that you can." Wu Qiang asked, "Aren't you leaving with us?" "Yes, I won't leave with you," Charlotte said. "I'm going to support my people." Someone in the hostage group said, "How can we do that? If you leave, who will protect us?" Charlotte's voice was cold. "No one owes you anything, and don't take my kindness for granted. This is all I can do for you. If you want to live, You'll have to rely on yourselves." After saying that, he strode out of the warehouse and suddenly sped up, rushing toward the factory's gate. There were 4 Special Forces soldiers standing guard at the gate, but they all turned into corpses after 2 seconds. Charlotte stepped over their corpses and disappeared into the forest shrouded in darkness. On the railway, hundreds of Boca's Sacred Lands armed forces were charging toward the rescue club's defensive line. The forest itself was not suitable for positional warfare because every tree was a natural cover. The Boca's Sacred Lands armed forces hid behind the trees. Even if the veterans of the rescue club had the best weapons, such as the Gale assault rifle and the XL 2500 sniper rifle, their bullets would only hit the tree trunks and be wasted. The remaining dozens of Special Forces soldiers attacked the rescue club's defensive line from the flank. The ones stopping them were the members of the Zodiac Squad who had come down from the mountaintop. 6 people against dozens of well-equipped and battle-hardened Special Forces soldiers. Even the members of the Zodiac Squad were having a hard time. At this rate, the situation would be reversed in half an hour at most, and things would develop in the worst possible direction. The members of the Zodiac Squad would be killed after exhausting their ammunition, and the veterans of the rescue club would also be defeated by the Wolfpack tactics. Some would die, some would flee, and those who were captured would be beheaded by the Boca's Sacred Land members. Bang, bang, bang. Erdamu poked his head out from behind the tree he was hiding behind and fired a few shots with the Gale assault rifle. However, a few bullets hit the tree trunk he was hiding behind, which splinters flew everywhere, and he did not dare to poke his head out. "Why isn't Boss back yet?" Erdamu looked anxious. "He's in the factory. He's facing more enemies than us." Qianjun poked his head out from behind the rock he was hiding behind and fired a shot. A Special Forces soldier who was rushing toward them was instantly shot in the head. In the bushes, Engumi Khan also pulled the trigger. The XL 2500 sniper rifle fired a bullet. 100 meters away, a Special Forces sniper who was stealthily moving on the hillside was shot to the ground. "Get down!" Yelena suddenly exclaimed. Everyone dropped to the ground. Boom! A grenade exploded in the forest, and shrapnel flew everywhere. F***CK. Sayamo cursed. My boat was hit by shrapnel. Taking advantage of the grenade's suppressive fire, the Special Forces pressed forward at least 10 meters. On the other side. Bang, bang, bang. Giovanna stood behind a tree next to the railway and fired. She killed 2 armed Boca's Sacred Land members who were rushing toward her from the railway, but more people rushed over from the railway and the forest on both sides. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Giovanna could even feel the heat waves from the bullets as they flew past her cheeks. Splat! A veteran from the rescue club behind her was shot in the chest and fell to the ground. On the battlefield, there were already dozens of corpses. They had followed her here to fight, and they had sacrificed their lives here. She did not even know their names. In Africa, the most worthless thing was human life. Kill! Giovanna roared and fired wildly with the Gale assault rifle. However, this time, the charging armed Boca's Sacred Land members were all lying on the ground. Her bullets did not hit any targets. Click, click, click! There were no more bullets in the Gale assault rifle. Giovanna's heart sank. She was losing confidence in the battle before her. When is Master coming back? Teresa threw a magazine at Giovanna. She was also in a terrible fix. If we keep fighting, we'll all die here. Where's that woman? Giovanna asked. That guy called Shintu? Teresa smiled and said, he's probably trembling in the back. Don't worry, Rosa and Stella are taking care of her. She'll be fine. Giovanna hesitated for a moment. If there's really no other way, let them take her away first. Master has instructed us to protect her no matter what. Rumble. A rocket suddenly whizzed past her. Rumble. Several veterans from the rescue club were instantly blown away by the rocket. Some had their arms broken, while others had their legs broken. Their deaths were too horrible to look at. Charge over and kill them. Boca's Sacred Lands commander roared. Amidst the shouts, a large group of armed Boca's Sacred Land members charged over like they were on steroids. As they charged, they opened fire. Bullets rained down on the rescue club's front line. The veterans from the rescue club were suppressed by the firepower and did not dare to raise their heads. However, they could not bear to open fire blindly because they did not have much ammunition left. The situation was already very critical. Giovanna could no longer hold it in. She took out her satellite phone and dialed Rosa's number. Amidst the hail of bullets, she said, "Rosa, we can't hold on much longer. You and Stella, hurry up and take that woman away." "How can we do that? How can we abandon you and escape alone?" Rosa's voice rang out. "Wait for me. I'll come over to support you immediately." "You?" Giovanna wanted to stop her, but Rosa had already hung up. This battle was already developing in the worst direction, and it was developing very quickly. However, at this critical moment, a hail of bullets flew over from the direction of the Friendship Mining Company. Each bullet ended the life of a Boca sacred land member. Not a single bullet missed its target. Headshots. 20 to 30 people were killed just like that in 2 to 3 seconds. Those who reacted quickly had the chance to take a look behind them. Those who did not react fast enough were sent to hell before they could figure out what was going on. But regardless of whether they reacted fast or slow, no one was able to dodge this sudden sneak attack. The pressure on the rescue union side was instantly reduced. Giovanna was stunned for 2 seconds before she suddenly said excitedly, "It's Master. It's him. It must be him. These guys are dead meat." Stella was also excited. Her hands were trembling when she fired. The one who made the shot was, of course, Charlotte. In this world, only he had the ability to kill 20 to 30 people in 2 to 3 seconds with one magazine. Charlotte's ability to achieve such a level of marksmanship was closely related to his brain. His brain had instantly calculated all the data needed to kill those targets in the super brain mode, such as where and when to raise the muzzle by how many millimeters, how many times to pull the trigger, and so on. These data were as precise as a computer program. And under the control of his brain, his body had also executed all the instructions accurately, which resulted in the outcome just now. Some of the Boca's sacred land members turned around and looked for the enemy who had fired the sneak attack just now. However, they did not find anyone at all. What happened just now was like a ghost suddenly ambushing them and then leaving without a sound. But just as a few of the Boca's sacred land members were about to leave, their eyes suddenly lost their focus. Right after that, they suddenly raised the guns in their hands and pulled the trigger at their comrades in front of them. Amidst the gunshots, the Boca's sacred land members who were engaged in combat fell into a pool of blood. Their strange behavior was soon discovered, and the people in front of them also fired at them. There were more than a dozen corpses on the tracks. On a tree, Charlotte looked at the corpses on the tracks expressionlessly. Then, he leaped from one tree to another. 10 seconds later, the same thing happened again. This time, more Boca's sacred land members wanted to shoot at their comrades beside them. In the blink of an eye, the Boca's sacred land members' front line collapsed. One by one, they fell under the guns of their comrades. Those who wanted to kill were killed, and those who didn't were killed. Some of the Boca's sacred land members even fired at the U.S. Special Forces who were on the same front line. When had the U.S. Special Forces ever suffered such a loss? Their firepower almost shifted to the Boca sacred land members' front line. It was a chaotic battle. At the front line of the Rescue Society veterans, Giovanna was dumbfounded. She looked at the inexplicably chaotic battlefield and was stunned for a long time before she asked, "What happened?" "I think it's probably rabies," Stella said with a shrug. Of course, Giovanna did not believe that it was rabies, but she knew that the battle would be over soon. She said, "It's a miracle." In her heart, Charlotte had become a god that she was willing to sacrifice everything for. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.